1 minute for we would like to call to order our Lynchburg City School Board meeting for June the 6th, 2023. And as we call our meeting to order, I do want to mention once again that Dr. Sharon Carter will not be with us tonight in our board meeting, and so we will govern ourselves accordingly in that regard. At this point, we move to section B of our agenda, which is the approval of the agenda. And members of the board, you've had the agenda featured on board docs as it relates to what we are to discuss tonight. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move we approve.
Motion been made by Dr. Day, seconded by Dr. Brennan, that we would approve tonight's agenda for our school board meeting. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
School Board Member Mr. Trost.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Day.
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Andrews.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0, 1 absent.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. Well, for the first time in a long time, Madam Superintendent and Board, we do not have any public comments at all for tonight's meeting. That means you all are doing an outstanding job, and we are appreciative of that for tonight. Madam Clerk, just to be sure, no voicemails, no?
Correct.
All right. Then we will now move to the next item on our agenda. And this item here, let me see, a special school board presentation. And so I'm going to turn the floor over to Dr. Edwards.
Absolutely. Every now and then we take a moment to just pause and celebrate our heroes and our rock stars who have contributed to the success of LCS and have meant so much to our students, our families, our faculty, our staff, everybody here, and the Lynchburg community, plus beyond. So tonight we're going to take a moment, pause, and celebrate you, Dr. Coleman. Tonight is your night. For your So many of you may know that Dr. Coleman has been on the school board for 9 years and the chair for 3 years, which is, you know, we multiply that times 3, so that's another 9 years just being the chair and having to meet with me all the time. But that length of service and commitment, it is just so heartwarming what you have done, just even in my time here, and the value, the work, the commitment, the accountability, the go hard, the show up, all of that, we just can't match that. And we so appreciate you. We appreciate your leadership, your professionalism. We appreciate your laughter and your humor when sometimes we don't want to laugh, but you keep us together. Of course, we always appreciate the crunch and munch and just fellowship with you as we sit here and do the work. But most importantly, we appreciate how deeply, deeply you care about the children of this city. When you interviewed me, that was very evident, and I never told you this, but I was like, ooh, I want to work for him. Because you were just so passionate about kids and their potential and what they can do and what they can be, and you have not wavered one bit in that feeling for that. So for that, we are very grateful. And we're going to spoil you a little tonight, and we have a couple gifts for you. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Brennan for one of those special gifts.
Good. So Dr. Coleman, I'm going to ask you to walk around and stand in the middle of our little table here so we can appreciate you and your nice outfit, because you always dress so nicely. Are any of your family here, Dr. Coleman?
My daughters are here, I believe. My wife is out of town.
Good. Would your daughters like to come up and join you with this recognition? We'd love to have them. That'd be great. Okay, look at all those nice ladies right there, and folks out there. So, a resolution of commendation and appreciation to Dr. James E. Coleman, Jr. upon his time served as a member of Lynchburg City School Board, presented by the Lynchburg City School Board. Dr. James E. Coleman, a champion crusader for public education in the city of Lynchburg, has worked diligently as a member of Lynchburg City School Board for a total of 9 years. His professional manner in dealing with people and issues earned his favor as a caring and compassionate individual who devoted himself to the service of Lynchburg City Schools. Dr. James E. Coleman has been an able spokesperson and supporter of educational causes. He has been encouraging to students and their families. Dr. Coleman, a parent himself, was knowledgeable of the challenges that many students, parents, teachers, and staff members encounter. Throughout his service, he was sensitive to the educational needs of all students and championed new and creative approaches to education. As chair of the Lynchburg City School Board, Dr. Coleman at all times demonstrated superb leadership and utmost respect for all school board members, administration, and staff. With this resolution, the Lynchburg City School Board pays tribute to Dr. James E. Coleman, a person of excellence and integrity who by effort and by example made valuable and far-reaching contributions to public education in Lynchburg, Virginia. Whereas Dr. James E. Coleman served with distinction as a member of Lynchburg City School Board for 9 years, including 3 years as chair of Lynchburg City School Board. Whereas Dr. Coleman served with distinction as a member of Lynchburg City School Board for 9 years, including 3 years as chair of Lynchburg City School Board. Sorry about that. Want to make sure we got that point.
That's worth saying twice.
That is.
Whereas Dr. Coleman, keen insight and foresight were qualities of leadership that were appropriate to the needs of Lynchburg City Schools during this period of change, challenge, and growth. And whereas Dr. Coleman consistently attended school events and programs, he participated on boards and committees as a representative of the school board, including as member and chairperson for a number of Virginia School Board Association committees. And he volunteered his time to help in all capacities throughout the school division, demonstrating his true support of LCS and all students. And be it resolved that the Lynchburg City School Board of Lynchburg, Virginia takes pride in the excellent service that Dr. James E. Coleman rendered to the operation and success of the public schools of this community and indeed throughout the Commonwealth. And be it resolved that the Lynchburg City School Board of Lynchburg, Virginia hereby affirms its appreciation to Dr. James E. Coleman for 9 years of devoted service to public education, during which he demonstrated courage and tenacity in the pursuit of educational excellence. His numerous contributions will affect generations to come. The Lynchburg City School Board wishes to commend Dr. James E. Coleman for the quality of leadership and on behalf of the school division and its youth, and for the quality of his stewardship on behalf of the city of Lynchburg, Virginia. Thank you, Dr. Coleman.
So, Dr. Coleman, you know you can't go out like that without our schools recognizing you as well. So our schools, our students, our principals all got together to give you this wonderfully mixed, nicely balanced swag basket of all things LCS so that you can remember your time at your favorite schools, which are all of them. So,
appreciation for your time, this lovely chair and a little gift from the school board also in a card. But we all want to thank you for everything that you've done.
Do I have to wait until after June 30th?
We can see.
Dr. Coleman, you never sit down. You don't let, that man runs, he's going.
We have your daughters here. They'll make sure that
That's
you
right.
take a break.
And Dr. Coleman, one other thing, I want to point out that there are a number of former school board members here. Mayor Stephanie Reed is here to celebrate your presence and your time, and they've been nice enough to come and be here also. So thank you all very much. Thank you all for coming.
Yes.
Everybody, thank you.
We have one last favorite gift that we know you want. For your, this is about 9 years worth of snacks to keep you busy while you continue with that. And since Mayor Reed is here, if you'd like to say a few words.
Or to come up.
Oh, yeah. What do you think?
Since you're here with us.
Here, is this good?
That's great.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. Dr. Brennan messaged me yesterday and invited me, and so I wanted to come and just say that in the short time that I've gotten to work with Dr. Coleman, that it is very apparent that he does have a heart for the children of our city. And so I really do appreciate your passion for our community. I've gotten to attend his church and see where his other passion is, which is for the body of Christ and believers, and see how he leads the congregation of his church. And so I appreciate all that you do here and around the city. And he was at the coalition meeting that we had the other day at Diamond Hill Baptist Church. And so we all know that he is not going to stop, as you said, Mr. Trost, he's not going to sit down. So we know that he will continue to serve the city and serve it well, and his legacy will continue. So thank you again for all that you've done and will continue to do to serve the city of Lynchburg. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So Dr. Cohen, we're going to see if any of your fellow school board members would like to make any comments on this occasion.
Well, I can break the ice.
There you go.
Dr. Coleman, James, if I may.
You may.
Yeah, we had a friendship that goes back many years, but it's certainly grown and strengthened during my time on the school board with you. And I have sat back and watched you carry yourself with the utmost professionalism, serve as a mentor to so many different people, myself included. Your wisdom, your guidance, your thoughts, your caring attitude for not just the children of this community, but the entire community is unsurpassed. And I personally appreciate it. And I thank you for your friendship. And I look forward to many years of continuing friendship and growth and strength between the two of us, as well as I'm sure the rest of our community. So thank you, sir, for your service. Thank you for your friendship, and Godspeed to you.
Thank you, Mr. Trout.
I've only gotten to work with Dr. Coleman for a very short period of time, so I'll be honest in saying I'm mad at you for leaving already. But I can appreciate that it's time for you to take a break and enjoy life outside of Lynchburg City Schools. But I can also say that you have been a guiding force. You have been someone that we can all emulate, that we can see the honesty and directness and forthrightness that you show with everybody. Your willingness to listen and hear all perspectives, and then to think about them and weigh them before making a decision. And that's something that all of us can learn from, and certainly we hope that we will all take that after you. And after I get mad, over getting mad, I'm going to try to do that too.
Gloria.
Well, James, I just want to say first, thank you for living a life of love, which includes accepting me and my wife and daughter, my family. I can't can't overstate how important that is to me in all circumstances. When I came on the board, rather awkwardly, you were about 6 months away from the end of your first term, I believe. And you have gone from the man you were then, who felt the need to comment on every single thing. And, see, they're laughing back there. Not only that, but he always had to say a lot. And I think it's the mark of a very good man and a good leader who can listen to criticism about that, which he got when we were at a board self-evaluation retreat up at VSBA. And he took it to heart, and he has become a man who not only doesn't feel obligated to comment on every point, but as chair withholds his views until everybody else has had a chance to speak. The transition from that person to this person, that person would never be able to do what you do as a leader. That's a sign of a good man and a good leader who can take that constructive criticism and make it work. And you've been a fine chair, and I just really appreciate that. And thank you also for all the rides to and from places after board meetings.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Thank you, Kim. James, I made a few notes because I want to try to make this short and sweet, but I wanted to comment on two things. One is your amazing leadership. You know, you've demonstrated that not only by your professional manner and your outstanding dedication to the board and to the administration and the students, but also by your amazing ability to treat every person with the same degree of respect, understanding, and empathy. Whether the person is black or white, young or old, Republican or Democrat, LCS board member, staff, student, you always treat all people with respect, empathy, and kindness, and it's an amazing ability that you have. In the past 9 years as a board member, you've also been the heart and the soul of Lynchburg City Schools. Whether it's been cheering the graduating high school students on as they graduate, or encouraging all the LCF to turn up the thermostat in City Stadium for the convocation, you always demonstrate amazing enthusiasm and support, not just for LCS students and staff, but enthusiasm and support for public education, which is so important today. There's no doubt in my mind, as an individual board member, that the legacy that you leave with Lynchburg City School as member and chair will be difficult, if not impossible, for anyone to match in the future. And on a personal note, over the last 9 years, you and I have shared many personal experiences, including marriages of our children, birth of our grandchildren, the passing of our parents, which we've shared, and I'll always look back on those with such good memories. But I have to say that the most cherished memory I'm going to have is a comment that I think you make probably every day to probably everybody you meet, but it means so much to me, and I want to say this because I mean it from the bottom of my heart, when you say, I'm going to say to you tonight, I love you, man.
This guy is just nothing short of amazing. He's the reason why I joined the school board. When I sat down with him back in 2017, he put a vision in my head that I could do something bigger than myself, right? And I just want to say thank you for everything you've done for me in my life. And I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. So, yep.
Great.
Well, this is your final year on the board. This has been my first.
Yes, sir.
So we're just barely overlapping here. But I just want to say thank you for your patience with me as a new school board member as I've sort of tried to figure out what my role is and how to use it appropriately. And for your constant encouragement and support of me, even maybe at times that I should have been, I don't quite want to say rebuked, but corrected, something. You've always been encouraging and positive, and to me, and I've seen you do it with everyone else on the board, including the staff. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Dr.
say something. This is a man I roast in private, so I'm not gonna roast you here. Every time we go out for dinner, he knows what I do to him. But, as Dr. Franklin one time said, you start your day with this guy, with morning walk, then all day you talk to him on around campus, Coach Newman, and then at nighttime we finish our night with the prayers together. So we have bonded, disagreements apart, I've known his son more than I know him. So his family is very tight to me, and I will not mention that all that privately, but you'll be missed.
You too.
Okay, Dr. Coleman, you get the last word.
All right, and I promise you I'll be very brief.
I'm getting a little nervous.
Let me just say 9 years, 6 of those years in board leadership. For 3 years, I served as vice chair, and I had the privilege of serving under Dr. Mike Nillis, who sent me a text earlier today thanking me for my efforts under his chairmanship. And I was honored to serve for 2 years as the vice chair of the Honorable Susan Morrison, who is here tonight. And Susan, I will never be able to thank you and your family for the things that you taught me. Whatever Dr. Sinha just said that reflects growth on my part was large in part because of your wise counsel, and I thank you for that. I spent 3 years as chair, and I've had the privilege of having Dr. Sharon Carter, who is not with us tonight, to do an amazing job as vice chair. And then 2 of those years to have Dr. Bob Brennan. And he has been there with my family in so many ways. And I want to thank you for serving so powerfully as the vice chair of the Lynchburg City School Board.
Thank you so much.
You attend to everything. I don't think you miss anything. Everywhere. And your concern for all people is so commendable. I want to thank Charlie White, who is not here tonight, Regina Dolan Sewell, and Mary Ann House, who also served in board leadership or immediately past board leadership that helped me tremendously. And to have tonight Katie Snyder and Bill Evans, and I don't want to leave anybody else out, but these are 2 remarkable board members who have served so ably for Lynchburg City Schools. Give them a great big hand. We're close to the end. Dr. Brennan mentioned, and even Dr. Gupta, that my parents, I remember 9 years ago, a little bit before that, sitting at their table in Midlothian and saying that I've been approached to serve on the school board. There are no African Americans on the school board at that time, with Trinae Tweedy moving on to council. And I said, I don't know if I can do that. They said, yes, you can. And both of them now have, in my language, Kim, they've transitioned on to a better place, and I'm mindful of them tonight. Power. I want to say this to anyone who comes along in the future. I remember sitting over there where you are, Gloria Preston, 9 years ago, and I didn't like what was going on in the meeting. That's why I started on that path, Dr. Sinha, of commenting on everything. And I had the nerve, Deputy Superintendent Pugh, to say, raise my hand. I said, if I don't have any power on this board, I don't need to be on it. I terribly regret that statement. Because what I did not understand is that the power is not vested in any one board member. The power is vested in the team, governing team of 9 individuals, always putting political agendas aside and doing what's best for kids. That's where the power is.
Amen.
And lastly, progress. I'm thankful to my colleague, Jonathan Willis, and Councilman Sterling Wilder for Men to School. I'm thankful for having the opportunity to have participated in the final naming of the Empowerment Academy. I'm thankful for my years of service on the VSBA Board of Directors, in which I tried at every turn in the road to do whatever I could to help Lynchburg City Schools in meaningful ways. But most importantly, along with my colleagues still on the board and those who are out there witnessing tonight, one of the best decisions that I've ever participated in, when we were concerned about our kids, when we were concerned about the achievement gap, when we were concerned about making sure that Lynchburg City Schools move forward. We had a very difficult decision to make, and I am so proud of my and our decision to bring Dr. Crystal Edwards to Lynchburg to serve. Honor you and your family. It has been a pleasure to serve, and I will continue. I'm going to close by saying this. You may see me struggle, but you'll never see me quit. I'm leaving because my term has expired, but I'm going to keep on fighting and working hard with the capable leadership of Mayor Stephanie Reed. I applaud you, ma'am, for the outstanding way that you are listening to all of the citizens of Lynchburg and seeking to do the best you can in leading our city council forward. I'm going to fight for Lynchburg City Schools in a different type of way to continue to make Lynchburg one of the very best places to live in all the world. God bless you, and thank you for this opportunity to share. Now to the business at hand. I can't not say I'm thankful to one of the great congregations in the world, the Providence Transformation Church International family, for being here tonight. Thank you, and all of the persons who are here. Thank you so very much. Thank you, board.
Coach Newman.
And Dr. Gupta wants me to mention the athletic director of Virginia University of Lynchburg, Coach Tim Newman, is here. He's doing a fine job. And his wife and other LCS employees that are here tonight. Thank you so much for being here. All right, we've got, who? Oh, shucks, yeah. You cannot forget that. Madam Mayor, we're going to stand now for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now we can do business. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We love each of you very, very much. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Mayor. All right, we're going to now move to item E of the agenda as I see it, the finance report. And we're thankful, Dr. Edwards, that you would bring that on for our review.
Sure, certainly. I am going to turn it over to Ms. Capazzi to go over the expenditure and revenue report, as well as the health insurance, and there is a handout for health insurance, which she will also go over.
Oh, but wait a minute, let me do something because I'm gonna be in trouble. Mayor Reed, I want you to know that there's another mayor in Lynchburg also, and if I don't say this, I will be in trouble. We want to thank Mayor Doris Waller for being here tonight. All right, go right ahead.
Okay, good evening, board. So you have the monthly board report in front of you. You also have the request format for the expenditure summary. This is ending April 30 of 2023. You can see on the monthly board report that we are on track as far as 74.6% of expenditures to date, 94.3% including encumbrances. Again, ending April 30, we're on track with last year's numbers. Our health insurance reserve has not changed. The health insurance summary from March to April, we've shown a slight decrease as far as the amount of money that we are putting out versus the receipts coming in.
There is a mistake on the April of 2022. The fiscal year receipts and disbursements are not just for the month, that is for the entire year to date. So those bottom two blue and green tables, if you'll refer to the corrected version that I've given you, you can then see that those numbers that were originally reported at the $8.5 million is the year-to-date number, not for the month. So that's been corrected. However, it did also show that there was a discrepancy in March from 2022 between the data that was collected and recorded and what was on board docs. And what was on board docs was correct. So we corrected the data, and so this corrected also was corrected for March of 2022. We are still in the black as far as for this year, with $456,000 still remaining as far as what we budgeted for health insurance for the year. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I do have a question. So looking at the monthly report, in April, there was a large book donation.
Yes, it hasn't been recorded. It was recorded in May, so you will see that at the top under donations for the end of May.
Was that on a corrected version of the May report then? Because I had the same note to myself at our May meeting, that we didn't see it.
No, this report is through April 30th.
Right.
So the donation wasn't recorded until the month of May. So next board report we'll have through May 30th, and then you'll see.
May comes after April.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
All right, any further questions, Dr. Gupta?
So with the, in the budget, we had about $700,000 for compensate for the health insurance gap. With the new budget projections, is that money still in there?
No,
Has it been taken?
it was taken out with the new budget projections, and instead we're putting in that equalized percentage that matches the cities on all the plans other than the individual.
So this is month of May, as you said, summer is starting, so elective procedures will happen. And this black, I hope it stays black, but looking at the historical data, it may not stay black. So what's your plan for the next year?
So the plan is exactly that. What we've already budgeted, we're gonna offset our expense with that additional 32% that we're altering to some of our insurance plans. So there should be no change. We did not need anything additional because honestly, what's happening is our staff are contributing based on the rate.
And my last question is, as during the budget discussion, we found that there's $384,000 just in premiums we pitch in for these ancillary units, which other counties should be sharing their fair share. And not counting how much we pay out in benefits in some of those ancillary units. That information was not there with the board. So I'm assuming that there'll be a gap in terms of premium collection and the benefits payout. So is there a plan to go in the direction of fair share by local counties, not LCS taking the whole burden? Because that will provide $384,000 is a significant saving, and if we take our own share out, it may not be more than $120,000 to $150,000.
Yes, so Barbara Reifema, my assistant director, and I have started looking at those lease agreements that we have with those additional entities. So we hope to bring that to the facilities committee as soon as possible, so that we can have a decision before our next year.
I'm going to continue with one.
Continue.
So you mentioned the lease agreement. The reason the lease agreement is, as I said last time, in the lease agreement, we have a clause to provide them health insurance. And I wish I can get an apartment complex where they provide me free health insurance just because I sign a 1-year lease with them. You see what I'm saying? That'll be wonderful. So whosoever has done it has done a very innovative inclusions in a contract. And you're a lawyer, I'm not, but
It doesn't take a lawyer to figure that's a good deal for somebody.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Ms. Kopazik? I want to thank you for the excellent work you do every reporting period. in regards to what you share with us. And if there are no other comments relative to this section of the agenda, I'm going to move us on to our consent agenda, which is Section F. And the items there are the approval of our May 2nd meeting minutes, May 16th work session, the appropriate religious exemption requirements, human resource report, and a human resource report addendum. What is the pleasure of the board in terms of approving the consent agenda?
Ask a question.
You may certainly do so, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to make a comment and ask one question on the comment is that under the Human Resource Board report, there are, I think, 5 people who are retiring, who have been with us for a long time. I'm sure that they have been appreciated by the schools that they come from, but I also want to verbally state that in this environment, that we have these 5 people, one of whom was a kindergarten teacher at Sheffield was in our service for 24 years, a physics and chemistry teacher, used to last for 31 years, and then Dr. Annette Miller, who worked at Darrington for so long as a school counselor. But I just wanted to take a minute just to thank them for their work and acknowledge that. I think it's very impressive, and thank you all for doing that. And then the question I have, Ms. Scott, is if you're still in the spotlight as far as human resources go, is I know last year around this time we had about 191 resignations. Can you give us an update on how we're doing now as far as losing staff or gaining staff, whichever is the most positive statement?
Yeah, we are doing really good with gaining staff. We still have quite a bit of resignations, though. Yes.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
We do have quite a bit of resignations, but we're doing really good with finding talent and bringing talent to Lynchburg City Schools.
Can you give us an idea of how we're going to relate to last year's resignations, do you think?
Let me get back with you all on that.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Prepare the numbers. Yep.
All right, thank you, Dr. Brennan. Dr. Day.
Since you came up to the podium, are you expecting to explain something in particular?
Yeah, I wanted to bring your attention to the transfer section. So the transfer section is new. So the transfer section is our current employees that's transferring within our division in different assignments.
So that's
And nominations are new employees.
yeah. So where is the transfer section?
On the addendum.
The addendum. Where's the
So
addendum?
it should say nominations, then transfers, and then resignations.
I don't have the addendum.
I think,
board docs.
Dr. Day, it actually may be an update of that human resource report. Maybe if
Okay.
you click on it, I think they've updated the report.
Yes, it was
I didn't realize
updated
that
today.
either.
Okay, I see. I usually
F5.
download all this a couple days
Me
before.
too.
so-
I
Okay,
see that.
but I do have another question.
Please go right ahead.
In the agenda, under executive content, it refers to a hold for Director of Instruction and Program. So can you explain that for me, please?
Sure, I can.
Okay,
take that one.
whoever
Yes,
answers
yes,
can
that
cover it.
is the, so one of the things that I had shared with you with Dr. Coleman, Sam Coleman, leaving us, that we've combined student services and instruction to be the, so that Derek Brown would be the Chief Academic and Student Services Officer, otherwise known as CASO, as we call him. And then under him, his director position has morphed a little bit to match instruction and programming. And part of that has to do with what we learned when we went to our finance training about the budgeting for both the academic side of the child's needs, but also the social, emotional, and support side of the needs. So the instruction side and the program side that supports that. So that director of instruction and program is on the addendum agenda as Jennifer Cruz here on the addendum.
So what does it mean that there's a hold?
That was it. That should come out. It was like a placeholder to remind us to put this thing on
Okay.
here, to put it on there for that. So that board members would know, if you printed it ahead of time, that we would be doing this pretty late in the game. And typically we don't do, we try not to give the board addendums, but we are in hiring season and we want to snatch at the people as quick as possible. So up until today, power outage and all, we were still finalizing some of our hiring, which is why you'll see these changes in the addendum.
So can you repeat for me the name of the person that's in?
Jennifer Cruz.
Jennifer Cruz.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Dr. Day. If you have nothing else on that matter, Dr. Gupta.
Well, the motion is not on the floor, right? This is a pre-discussion.
But this is, this is approving the consent agenda, and then you can pull in the item for further discussion if you needed
That's what
to.
I'm saying. The motion to approve the consent agenda has not been moved yet, right?
No, we're still in discussion, please.
Okay. Question for you. So this 1547, we have provisionally approved.
Yes.
Is it helping you to recruit new talent, or
Yes, absolutely, it's helping.
what else could be done to attract new talent to LCS? Because that's the most important thing. We are in business of educating kids. So what do you think? And I'm putting you on spot, so.
Let's see.
1550.
Yeah.
I literally was thinking that, right? $3,000 more. That's exactly right.
Maybe, you know, we can add some parks as well, you know, some of the parks got cut, so.
And I would agree that that is our most important, our talent is our most important resource for our kids. Obviously, classroom close and building close. And just to remind the board, one of the things that we were doing over multiple years, and we started last year, or actually a couple years ago, when we were looking at living wage, thanks to you, Dr. Gupta, and raising up our classified staff, and then looking at getting towards the $15 an hour for classified staff. And then our next move was we need to look at the teaching staff, and that's where the 50 came into play. But there are other areas, if you look at if you compare our compensation for our assistant principals and our supervisors, our directors and our principals, we're barely holding on in that area as well. That would have been step 3. Had 1550 gone this year, we would have moved to working on that next year. So in terms of just keeping talent, we are seeing some of our administrators, similar to where our teachers were last year, getting these higher salaries elsewhere, and not being able to refuse those higher salaries. So we'll continue our work, but it is something worth noting.
Yeah.
One idea in that direction is when we do have on-field positions, perhaps we could use those funds to offer signing bonuses?
Yeah, sign-on bonus will definitely help as well.
All right, now, I think Dr. Gupta brought up a very good point. Is there a motion to approve the consent
I'd
agenda?
make a motion to approve.
All right,
this
Dr.
consent
Brenda's
agenda.
made a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, second by Mr. Trost. Now, any further questions or discussion on the motion to approve the consent agenda? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
School Board Member Ms. Preston.
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Charles.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Day.
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Andrews.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0, 1 absent.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And now we are moving nicely through our meeting. Okay.
I just-
Oh, no, Dr. Edwards wants to say something. Go right ahead.
No, I just want to make a note, because I don't know if you've all met Miss Sherry Shepard, who is our Chief Human Resources Officer. So as we sort of, come on up, Miss Shepard. So as we transition, you all know that Ms. Scott is going to step down to be the Assistant Director. This is Ms. Shepard, who is already hit the ground running and was at schools all day long, today visiting with principals, but I wanted to introduce you all to her.
Well,
so that-
thank you, Dr. Edwards, for doing that. Let's give her a hand. Yes, Dr. Gupta.
Ms. Shepherd, could you explain to the public what an SPHR experience is? It requires a lot of in-depth.
I would be happy to. SPHR stands for Senior Professional in Human Resources.
Wow.
It's a certification through the HRCI Institute. Back in the day, when I got that in 2006, only about 1% of the HR professionals actually held that certification. In 2015, I received a double certification through SHRM, the Society of Human Resource Management, for their SPC, which is Senior Certified Professional, SCP. So, yes, double certified. I have a bachelor's degree in organizational management and leadership. I have an associate degree in divinity. So pastoral care plays well. I do not have a degree in mind reading, so you have a deficit in your new chief HR officer. But I personally want to recognize and applaud Ms. Scott. She has done an amazing job in helping me to get acclimated. Yes, she presented your agenda because I figured you want to talk to the boss, you want to talk to somebody who knows what's going on. And that would be her.
Wow.
So she does an amazing job. I am thrilled with the team that you guys have provided me. They have a true heart for leadership and for service, and we're going to do all that we can to coach, mentor, and train and develop for them to be the absolute best HR team anywhere in the Lynchburg area. So I am so proud of them, and I'm proud to be head of that department. I look forward to working with you all.
Great.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards, for that, and it's such a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Shepherd. Looking forward to the great work you'll bring to LCS. At this time, I believe now we can move to Section G with our school board member reports. And please, if you do not have a report, you can help us nicely by indicating as such. I think we'll start with G1, Finance and Facilities, Dr. Sinha.
The committee has not met lately as we count on our school experts to reconfigure the data. We did forward a request, questions that had come to me about realigning what our request was according to categories, and it looks like, once again, they come through. So that's where we are with that.
Okay, quite naturally, Dr. Edwards, my pointed question as the conversation continues, if there is any, is there anything that we need to have done prior to June 30th? I don't want it to be said that anything that was needed to be done, this board didn't accomplish relating to finance and facilities.
Not necessarily relating to finance and.
Well, just reappropriation.
Yeah, well, that's
And
on the
we're
agenda.
gonna talk about
Yeah, we're
that.
going
All
to
right,
talk about
good.
that tonight.
All right, thank you. Any further questions relative to this very important part of our work? And I want to thank you, Dr. Sinha, for an excellent job that you have done, the committee as well, in helping us and our administration through what I at least argue on our part has been our greatest iteration of in-depth thinking and advocacy.
I just wanted to point out, it's finance and facilities, and the human resource is important, but the environment or the structure these students spend 1/3 of their lifetime or daytime is also important. So I'll share later on my visit today to Heritage High School in East Sea Glass to see the infrastructure needs there, which are very important.
Dr. Gupta, I'm glad you brought that up, and as we move on, that's why this regard for equity was taken to a higher level with equity habits with our superintendent, because equity also includes making sure that our facilities for all students across the school division are adequate in regards to any need that any student may have. And so that's valuable work, and I know all that great work is going to continue in a robust way. Thank you, Dr. Gupta, and you can comment on that later in the agenda. G2, Governor's School Committee, Dr. Gupta.
No report.
Law Regional, Dr. Carter is not here, and the STEM Academy with Dr. Carter, and the Legislative Advocacy and Community Relations Committee with Dr. Carter. We will just wait and see if she sends us an email or something of that nature, but I think we can move on from those areas. All right, Partners in Education, Dr. Sinha and Ms. Preston.
Okay, excuse me. The Partners in Education met on June 1st, and there was a lot of conversation in regard to Partners in Education. One thing that I think is really important is that they're going to work on updating the PI board information packet, because there are a lot of questions regarding what the mission, the goal, the priorities happen to be with Partners in Education. I think that's really critical. So they're working, and they're also working on creating a best practices booklet so that our partners are aware of what we expect them to do, and so that they can ascertain whether or not those are things that are within their parameters to be able to do. I think those are probably the biggest things that are taking place. All the new partnerships are, obviously will go through the superintendent and the deputy superintendent's office, but that's again so that you are aware and they are aware of what the expectations are from both directions, from the partners as well as from Lynchburg City Schools. And so I think that working on that booklet and making it available online will do a couple of things. Number one, it will make the information available to anybody who's interested in becoming a partner in education, but it also will clarify some of those questions and save some time for those people that have to answer those questions, and to ensure that everybody's getting the same information, because we all know that if you ask me one piece of information, ask Randy the same piece of information, sometimes you're gonna get the same answer, and sometimes you're gonna get it from our individual perspectives. And so I think that will help to clear the air as far as that part is concerned. I think those are probably the biggest things. Is there any question or whatever that you'd like to ask in regard to that?
All right, Dr. Sinat?
If I could, thank you. I wasn't able to make it to the last meeting. If I could add, Whitney's doing a terrific job having stepped into the void there, and we really appreciate the effort that she's put into it, especially lately, going through lists, working on questionnaires, trying to get some planning together. And I know that the board is very happy with her, so I just wanted to put that out there.
Good. Thank you. All right, thank you then very much, Ms. Preston and Dr. Sinha, for the partners in education, and we're pleased to see that that's moving along nicely. All right, the Education Foundation, Mr. Trost and Dr. Sinha.
Yes, well, Education Foundation held their annual honors banquet, celebrating and honoring the top 15 academic graduates from EC Glass and Heritage High School. That was held at the University of Lynchburg on Sunday, May 7th. It was well attended. It was a lovely evening. We had two speakers. They actually were graduates of EC Glass from 2011, and a husband-wife team. And they gave a very nice recognition speech. And I think we just had a lovely evening, and I know the students and the parents and guardians of those students were very thankful for the time and effort that LCS and the Lynchburg Education Foundation put into that evening.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Trost. Anything you want to add, Dr. Sinha?
No.
Okay. The food was particularly good at that. Yeah, thank you. That, very, very pleased with the great work of the Education Foundation. All right, Beacon of Hope, Mr. Andrews and Ms. Preston.
I don't have anything.
The Beacon of Hope held its annual scholarship dinner on last Thursday, and at that time, there were a total of 27 scholars who received scholarships, including the Commonwealth Scholars, Select Bank Scholars, EC Glass Hilltopper Alumni, Football Scholars, Dunbar Legacy, and CWC Scholars, and the J.P. Vaughn EC Glass Scholar, and that's a new one. Obviously, it was one that is in honor of J.P. Vaughn. There were more than $120,000 in scholarships that were awarded to 27 Glass and Heritage graduates. These students are going to attend a variety of post-secondary schools, including UVA, Virginia Tech, William and Mary, JMU, Virginia State, Christopher Newport. So it's a diverse group of schools that they will be attending. Today, they indicated that day marked the second day of Beacon of Hope's year number 2 high school internship program. And so they have, I believe she told me, something like 60-some interns that are there that are working from various businesses around the city, including Framatome, Centra, Lynchburg Grows, English Construction, Lynchburg Public Works, Select Bank, and others. But it's a wonderful opportunity for our students to get that work experience and to really know and understand what it is they're getting themselves into, to make sure that they are in fact going down the right path as far as what schools they choose to attend. And in those internships, they also make sure that the students are prepared for going into a work environment. They talk about things like networking and professional dress and how to create an impactful resume. professional communication. So all the kinds of things that you're going to look for when you're looking for an employee in your business are the things that they're being prepared to do. So they're really doing an outstanding job of helping our city. And when I think about from our mission statement to graduation and beyond, I think about this, because it is more than just getting that diploma or whatever. You got to do something once you get it. So they're preparing them to do those things as well.
Excellent report. Okay, excellent. So Beacon of Hope, we got a lot of great pieces here that are carrying on, time-tested, and we will continue to work very hard in that regard. Thank each of you very much. That now moves us to Section H, our Comprehensive Strategic Plan. And H1 will be dealing with our AP African American Studies update. And I do want to say, as you bring our distinguished presenter forward, that it was such a joy to serve and to see the great work of this individual working with students, whether it be preparing them for speeches or other kinds of things. And so, Dr. Edwards, if you would.
Sure. So we have Mr. Aaron Reed with us here tonight. And if you recall, we were the only AP African American Studies pilot course in the state, in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And a lot of that is thanks to Aaron's involvement in working with the College Board, bringing it here. And I had an opportunity to visit the class, and wow. I was really, really amazed with the kids, the camaraderie, the level of questions, the commitment, and they're out of their own voices, their advocacy for that particular course. So some of them had spoken to the board early on when we first piloted. But Mr. Reed is a circle back type person, so we've invited him to come back and talk a little bit more about where we are with the program now and any new updates.
Good evening. Good to see you all. Happy June. I am evidence that teaching does not stop in June, because I was just in interviews today for English department positions at EC Glass, so I came from there to here, so at any rate. 3 pieces of information that I just wanted to bring to you all in terms of our program. A couple of them are kind of reviews over the past year. One is kind of a direction for the future. And then I'm happy to take questions if you have them. So the first one is, you all know that AP classes at the end of the year have an AP exam, of course. Some of that is going through a change. The College Board is trying to move away from the one test, one score mentality, because that's pretty outdated. So a lot of these classes are now involving projects that are actually part of that AP score. This class is an example of that. So the kids had to complete a project during the 3rd quarter. It was on a topic of their choosing. It had to be research-based, and so that was part of their AP score. They did take a test at the end of the class, and that test happened earlier than all the other AP tests. It happened in the last week of April. Because it's a pilot test, we already know that those kids and I will never see those scores individually. Those kids knew it going in. The parents knew it going in. There's no college credit for it because they're still norming that test. But what we got informally as pilot teachers the week right before the end of school is we started to get some global numbers from that exam, as well as our schools sort of ranking or numbers in relation to that global standard. So this is, what I'm giving you is kind of rough numbers, and they are going to send me a more formal packet, which I will pass along to you all so we can look more closely at it. But here's the rough numbers. Out of the 60 schools, the glass component was in the top 5 schools nationwide for the scores on that exam. That's some hardworking kids. Like I said, the numbers are not entirely in yet. It's looking like maybe second. There's a private school in California we just can't get close to, but aside from that, we're in a really good place. So I'm really happy with, I tell my kids all the time, you are not a test score, right? You are more than a test score. But what I like is that those test scores show that we did the class correctly. And that was one of the things that I was worried about all year, because nobody's ever done this before. So we use a lot of metaphors about building a plane while flying it, and this kind of felt like we were flying the invisible plane, and they'll build it in a couple of years. So that's number 1, scores. Number 2, I did want to let you all know that College Board has asked EC Glass to be a model school for this program as well. And what that means is, so this summer, they're going to go from 60 schools to 800 schools for pilot year 2. I forget how many are in Virginia. I want to say 12. I know Heritage High School is going to be a pilot school with us. I have met that teacher, Ben Alexander. We've talked a couple of times, and he is headed to Howard University at the end of this month for training. I think it's like 12. The model school means that those teachers are going to be encouraged in the first semester to come to Glass at some point and to sit in the way that a number of you did to watch what will be my year 2 class, and to kind of see how some things work, especially as the curriculum changes just a little bit, not too terribly much. But I think that our scores have merited the College Board saying, this is a place that if you're not sure what you're doing or you just want a little bit extra, this is kind of the place to go. And so kudos to my kids, kudos to my administration for supporting all of that. My leaders likes to pop into that class as often as possible. And of course, those of you who had a chance to be in there, I know you guys had a good time. So I'm excited about us being a model school as well. The last one is I want to share with you that I was approached in January to become a consultant for the AP African American class this summer. And what that means is I would actually be the person teaching at one of these academies new teachers for this course. And I want to kind of say this publicly. My first answer was no. I answered them pretty quickly no. And my reason behind that was I am happy to teach this course, and I think that my students learned a lot and taught me a lot, but it's not my face that needs to be in front of new teachers. A month later, I got a call from the vice president of sort of curriculum there who oversees this program, and she's a good salesperson. She gave it the hard sell, and here's what she told me. She
Said your face
"Aaron,
wasn't so bad.
it's not between you and someone else. It's between you and 50 teachers not getting to train. What do you want to do?" So I do want to let you know that I have formally accepted the position of AP consultant for the African American Studies class for this summer. And interestingly, the week that they gave me is August 7th, which sounds familiar, doesn't it? Because that is our pre-planning week. So I clarified some things with Dr. Rule for me to be able to do that. First, I asked him if that was an okay thing to do. So I'll just go in and I'll get started setting up my classroom early. But that week, I will in fact be training a new cadre of African American Studies teachers. And they could be from anywhere. I don't know that those are going to be Virginia in particular. But I'm excited to do that, and I'm excited to be able to share what our students have done as kind of models. It's not the only way to do it. It might not even be the best way to do it, but it was obviously a good way to do it. So I'm very proud of that. So those are the 3 informational items. If there are any questions, I'm certainly happy to take them at this time.
Dr. Day.
So I was one of the folks who was able to visit your class. Thank you for letting me do that. And what I observed then was a pretty engaged group of students. But I wanted to ask you, how would you describe the engagement of that group of students compared to students in the other non-AP classes that you've taught in the past? Was this successful at engaging those students, do you think?
You know, the thing about that class is that it's an elective, right?
Yeah, so they're there by choice, yeah.
Ideally, they're there by choice. And with that particular class, I mean, let's be honest, there are kids who get to an elective, sometimes they don't know they like a thing until they're there, and they go, oh, this is kind of nice, and sometimes they don't want any elective, and something has to. Whenever we can find match the kid with something that they're interested in learning, then that's the sweet spot, right? Here's what I would tell you though. I had a kid the last week of school who was very honest with me. He was a senior, he graduated that last weekend, and he told me, he said, I'm gonna be honest, when we had that first meeting and I saw you up in the front of the room, I wasn't too sure about it, because and he didn't come out and say it, but he was like, I wasn't sure about you, man, to be honest. and by the end, I feel like we had developed a rapport. Again, you got to approach it with, I am not the fount of knowledge, really, with anything. I am here to provide a perspective and to listen to the lived experiences of my students. But to go back to your question, I think that's the answer to getting kids engaged, right? Is I have to care about as much about you as I want you to care about my class.
Mm-hmm. So when I first heard about this AP African American Studies class, what occurred to me is that this might be a way to get students engaged in AP classes that might not otherwise do that. Do you think that's true? Do you think that's happening?
I mean, those of you who were in my class, you heard my kids say, I had some kids in there who were like, I've never taken an AP class, I probably never will, this is it. And so for me, that feels like the answer. We don't need every kid to take every AP class, right? We all don't need to be in AP calculus, for goodness sake. But the idea that I can be in an AP class and be successful could open a door to, well, maybe I can do this. And that feels like the most important thing.
So lastly, let me ask you a question that's a little bit politically charged, because you know that this class has been the subject of controversy in various places. And I'm not trying to push that one way or another. I just would be interested in your thoughts about the strengths and weaknesses of the syllabus for the class.
Say that again.
Your thoughts about the strengths and weaknesses of the syllabus for the class.
You know, the beauty of the syllabus this year and even next year is that it's a working document, right? It's not rigid. So we heard about changes, for example, in January. Those changes were 4 months in the making. That wasn't the result of anything happening in that moment. You know, the best answer I can give you for the syllabus, I don't know if you all saw it, but a couple of days ago, one of my students published an op-ed in the News in Advance. And that's exactly what he said, which was, this is not a class in which someone said, this is what to think. This was a class in which people presented us with information, and then I got to come to some conclusions. The lesson that you observed, right, was about redlining in Chicago. And then what did we do? We looked at maps of Lynchburg. We don't tell them what to think. We said, I wonder what the connection is.
Here's what to think about.
And then the power of thinking about that, why are things the way that they are? That to me feels like the power of that curriculum. And that's, I mean, you know, the standing rule here, anybody in this room, please, if you want to come next year, if you were waiting for a personal invite from me, I apologize. This is your personal invite. But I was happy to have so many people in my room this year. You know, we had the former vice mayor in there. We had a lot of people who just wanted to see it. And I think the curriculum allows for that kind of window into things.
Okay, good, thank you.
Appreciate your question.
Thank you, Dr. Day, for your,
I was just gonna make a comment. I applaud you for what you're doing, because just standing here having this conversation with us is really what education is about. Education is not about what the teacher looks like. Education is about sending knowledge into that person so he or she can formulate an opinion based on his or her own experiences. And so I applaud you for doing that, because you give them that opportunity. It's not about where you came from. It's not about who you are. It's not about where you live. It's about, here's the information. You take a look at it and you decide, is this right, wrong, or indifferent? Is this the way you live, want others to live? It's having that conversation. It's not making them think something. It's making them think.
One of the things that I loved about Dadion's letter, and if you have not read it, please do go read that in the News in Advance. His point was that most of the loudest voices about this class are people who have not only never set foot in it, but will never choose to set foot in it. And to leverage an opinion about something, I mean, it's green eggs and ham, right? It's like until you're there, do you really know anything about that? Appreciate it.
Dr. Brennan.
So just a couple of quick comments. One is that the letter of the editor was in Sunday's paper, so people who still get the paper would read it because it really is terrific. Number two is for new board members this year, this topic, Mr. Reed brought this topic to us last year, and I just want to clarify what he said at the beginning, because I think some people may have missed it, which is that Mr. Reed was involved in this project on the AP basis, and they then invited Glass to be one of the pilot schools out of 60 schools in the entire country. So we were one of the 60 schools, and out of the 60 schools, we think they were in the top 5 in the entire country for Glass, which is pretty phenomenal. So number one, thank you for doing that, and thank you for the work. And number two, Mr. Reed, although he has many abilities and many talents and probably can never step out of his comfort zone, is the chair of the Department of English at EC Glass. And this is an African-American studies program, which he kind of took on as thinking this is a good thing for students to do. And obviously has done a terrific job with it. And again, those of you who didn't get a chance to go to the group should. And as Dr. Day pointed out, when Mr. Reed came to us last year, it was I really want to have an environment that students who may not usually sign up for an AP course go to. When you go to that course and see, he clearly succeeded in that also. So just a clarification of how this sets in, and many thanks to Mr. Reed for what he has done for those students and for that course and for the reputation of EC class. Thanks so much.
I will add as a final note, of course, we have an African-American history class at Glass. We've had it for a number of years. And I think one of my goals in these next couple of years is to try to find a way for these two classes to become a sequential elective, because we know how important those are for kids. We know how sometimes that's tricky for high schoolers to accomplish because of the way that the state of Virginia defines that. And I think this is a way, since it's not a history class, it's a studies class, which makes it interdisciplinary. There's really, aside from the fact that we're still talking about historical time periods, there's no overlap. So you really are getting two very different things. And, of course, Coach Johnson has gone to another school, so I know we are looking for someone at Glass to fill for that class, but I know it's going to be filled. So that's one of my visions for the future, is to be able to create a sequential elective out of this. So
Great.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Brennan. Anyone else want to comment on that? I do hope, Dr. Edwards, that we can help celebrate Mr. Reed's accomplishment in being selected to do what he's doing. I think that needs to happen wherever that happens, and we commend you, sir. Thank you for your great work. Let's give him a hand. All right, we will now move on to H2, which is our Facilities Master Plan update. Dr. Edwards?
So on our strategic plan, we have routinely given updates on the master plan. So I am going to turn it over to Dr. Wodeka to talk to you about where we are and next steps.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards. And as we've discussed, our facilities master plan process continues forward. We've been working on it for quite a few months now. During the month of May, we had 3 community meetings. I know a number of you had an opportunity to attend those. We also had 1,650 survey responses from our community, focusing in on what the priorities ought to be in our facilities master plan. And so a couple of key themes that came from that were a very strong interest in sort of refocusing our attendance zones in our schools to make sure they're sort of more focused on neighborhoods and more geographically focused. Of course, CTE, an expansion of pre-K, thinking about alt-ed opportunities, as well as a number of other things that we'll discuss in more detail as those recommendations come forward. So this month, the consultant will be is finalizing the draft scenarios. I saw them today and had just to ask for some clarification on the way they are packaged together. And so we should see those results by the end of the week, and we'll be getting ready to publish those to the community. Of course, the school board will see those first, but they'll be published to the community to gather their feedback on those potential options that might be there, maybe 5 to 6 different potential scenarios that we have for this school or that school or whatever the case may be, so that we can prepare you all for your August 8th joint meeting with City Council. And so we'll be getting that. And I was hoping to have dates for sort of short or smaller town halls that will occur this summer, town hall meetings that will occur this summer, so that we can review them with the public and give folks the opportunity to comment, as well as a secondary survey that give people the opportunity to comment, but don't quite have those yet. Just want to make sure we got the draft scenarios done before we started publicizing those. So
absolutely.
we'll be getting those hopefully very soon, and once we have those in hand, we will be scheduling those times and putting out that information as well. So our process continues forward. Again, a very, very deliberate and intentional process that has taken some time, but we are now to the point where we're having some very concrete scenarios that you will have the opportunity to react to and give some feedback on as we move forward. And so we're looking forward to making some thoughtful decisions. Again, they will be, in many cases, probably very difficult decisions, potentially, but they are important for the future of the community. And so I do think this process has been a strong one, although I know it has been elongated a bit. So we're excited about that.
When did you say we should probably see the package of recommendations?
I'm hoping next week.
Next week,
Yeah.
perhaps? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you for that, Dr. Day. Anyone else?
So the recommendations will entail everything, maybe consolidation, if need be closure, all those things will be part of.
So, the thing about this system is not this system, but the system of any schools is that it's incredibly complex, right? Because you have a number of buildings that can be used for different things that are related to different neighborhoods and other processes, and there's also transportation concerns and all these sorts of things. So right now, there's a number of sort of decision points that come up, right? So you have issues of, do you want to focus more geographically on where your attendance zones are, so be closer to your school as opposed to sort of driving across town. So that's sort of an yes or no. And so if you go that way, then there's these sorts of options that come forward. And if you go the other way, there's another number of other sorts of options that might come forward. Tying into that, also thoughts about pre-K expansion, which we've had a lot of conversation about, ALTED and CTE. So there's lots of different scenarios. So what the scenarios will look like were sort of paths through that flow chart that we might take. And so there could be, we'll present probably about 5 potential scenarios, and there may be alternatives that you all want to see as well that help us see how efficiently the buildings are used, the costs of those different paths forward, and those sorts of things.
That was my next question, because some of these buildings will require quite a bit of uplift to continue using them.
Right.
So that cost will be included in that.
That's right. And so there will be scenarios that require additions to schools and things like that. And so those costs will be worked out.
All right, well, this is a Herculean task. It's huge, and I want to thank you, Dr. Waterker, and all who are part of this very important work. And so if there are no other thoughts on it for now, the matter will rest with continued progress. Dr. Gupta.
No, I just want to make a statement for the public. All this, you mentioned the word Herculean task requires that we must have a stability in the top leadership at Lynchburg. So we need to do every effort to make sure that the ship is stable.
Thank you, sir. I will concur with that comment. All right, we're going to move on to unfinished business. And under unfinished business, we have our budget discussion, and Dr. Edwards and team will lead us through that.
Okay. So when we last met, we talked about some potential reductions to meet the categorical funding allocations that City Council voted on and approved on May 23rd. So in the public content area are those allocations. So the May 23rd agenda packet, that is City Council's allocations, as well as a document labeled H, potential budget cuts, which is the pyramid that we worked off of when we had our work session, and we were looking at what could we reduce to try to align our budget with the allocations that City Council made. The other document, which is dated 6/6 tonight, is the administration's best attempt at trying to align our budget goals with City Council's projections, although we have some suggestions. But we also want to be very thoughtful, transparent, and kind of take you through our thought process, how we ended up here, and what we think that would require us to do as next steps if this is the direction that the school board wants to go. I will remind you that the pyramid chart, which has everything from what you've already decided to cut, like school board stipends, and we've moved some positions, which I'll talk about when I get to the document, all the way down to school closures, which is something that we're waiting for the MGT consultant to kind of give us that flow chart of if then, and we didn't want to get in front of that, but that is an option for savings that we could potentially have should we not choose the recommendation that I'm going to put forth right now. So what I really want to focus your attention to is the document that says FY24 operating budget proposal, which is dated today. You should also have a hard copy that you can follow along with. And this document nearly matches what council put as their individual category allocations. If you can go to page 3, because I think we should start with the end in mind. So if we turn to page 3, the bottom of page 3, you will see the total operating expenditures. And you have our current budget, which is at 106, 312, 231. You have council's budget, which is at 109, 310, 484. That is what they approved, and that includes the council funds as well as what is still looking like the governor's budget, even though, remember, state budget is not finalized. So that 109, when they allocated the funds, they allocated the total funds revenues we receive from state, city, and federal as well. And then what you will see, it right next to that in this proposal on page 3 is that exact number. So we have not changed the total amount requested. So this budget proposal that we're going to present to you matches the 109, 310, 484 that City Council has allotted. We are recommending some slight changes in categories because we tried our best to make it work the way that it was assigned, and it's a difficult task to do that. So I'm going to kind of talk you through what's the same and what's different, and I may be jumping around, which is why I color-coded it and everything so that you all can follow along.
Dr. Edwards, would you prefer to go through this completely, or would you like to allow, how do you want to handle it?
Yeah, I think if I can go through it completely, I will probably answer your questions
Yeah.
that arise, because I have some as well, so I'll probably do one of those you may think. So let me first do big picture overview. As you look at this table, you'll notice you have all of the data from our current budget year for each category: instruction, admin, pupil transportation, and so on. But if you look at the council section, the whole, whether or not it's personnel services, benefits, or internal services, that's blank. Council did not assign the money to those individual levels. They just gave us the total for that category. But in full transparency, we want you to see where we're assigning the funds in each one so you can see how we get to total. So let me take you through big picture differences, and then I'll go back and explain the why behind the differences. So the first one is in instruction, and you can see council allotted us $74,541,662. And we tried our best. We couldn't make it work at that. So we are proposing that increase to $75,876,518. And that increase is due to a shift in 2 other categories. So we're not asking for more money. We're asking to move money around. Specifically, we're asking to take from the admin budget an additional $705,385, and then from the tech budget about $629,471.72. There's a rounding error because there's pennies in here, so it might be off by $1, but that we can fix that when we actually get to the spreadsheet. So our request is to increase instruction, but not ask for more money. If you look at administration, the second section, the yellow section, what we've done is decrease administration. Council allotted about 8.1 million. We got that down to 7.4 million. And I'm going to cycle back and tell you how we did that and what led into that. Page 2, the blue section, pupil transportation. Council allotted $6.5,999,000. We did exactly what they said. So there are absolutely no changes. I repeat, no changes in the allotment for pupil transportation. That includes about 20 plus vacant bus driver, bus aide positions in there, which we're hopeful we can get 20 bus drivers for that. The next section, operations and maintenance, again, council allotted about 12.4 million. We kept that exactly the same, no changes. Then there's a small section on facilities, 25,000, again, no changes. There was nothing in debt service, so that stayed the same. On page 3 in the orange section, other non-instructional operations, 42,000. We have the same, no changes. And then here's the next change in technology. you can see council allotted 5.5 million, and we reduced that to 4.8. So there are 3 categories which are different. That is, instruction went up, admin went down, and tech went down. And now that we have the big picture, I can kind of take you back and talk a little bit about what we did, how we did it, and the things that occurred. So I'm going to start with admin because it went down, and talk to you a little bit about how and why it went down and one of the choices that we made. So on our pyramid chart, you can remember we talked about managing vacancies in the admin building and cutting positions in the admin building, and there were about 15 positions. Well, when we went back and looked at the 15 positions between the vacancies and the management of positions, some of those, although they're in the admin building, aren't in the admin budget. So we had some changes there. So we ended up with vacant positions that we wanted to hire for next year, but we are not. So these are vacant positions that are no longer in our budget, that won't be filled with the current allotment. And that is one position in HR, which is the senior HR generalist. So that position is vacant and will not be refilled. There's a financial analyst position in the finance department as well. There is the PI liaison, the part-time PI liaison, not Whitney Boyd, but the part-time PI liaison that Mike Barron had, that he is no longer in that position. That one is also coming out. We also made some changes. You saw them on the transfer report. So one of them was the Director of Equity and Community Relations position has been RIFed, which is a reduction in force. So we won't have that director position, although we'll have the person in that position. And we've worked with the person in the position to secure another position in the division, and that's on the transfer report as well. 2 other positions were also RIFed. One is the print production specialist and a coordinator in community relations. I do believe one is going to be a retirement, and one we're still looking to see if there's something in division. If not, we support writing recommendations for anything outside of the division as well. There are a couple other things that we thought we could do when we were listing our 15 positions. And some of those were in technology, so we ended up not doing those positions. Some of them were in instruction, so we ended up not doing those positions. And then one of the positions was actually filled. So we've moved those vacant positions out. We've RIFed 3 positions. In addition, part of the challenge with the admin budget is that we had what I call student service or student-facing, student-working positions in there. And it's been that way my entire 5 years here, and I say the same thing every single year when people talk about the admin budget. I say, but you have to understand, it's not just HR, finance, superintendent's office, and community relations and equity. There are other positions in there. I've said that for 5 years. It's a difficult thing for people to understand, so we took a look at it, worked with finance, and saw if we can move them out. So next year when we talk about admin, we're really talking about HR, finance, and my office and community relations office for the most part. So those positions that are school-based that are in the admin budget, but we pull them out and move them into the instruction budget, are the elementary attendance clerks, the middle school attendance clerks, high school attendance clerks. So that's about 12 elementary, 3 and 3, 18 positions right there that we moved out of the admin budget to be into the instruction budget because they are school-based positions. We talked a little bit about serving the whole child, both the instruction side and the program side. And we would not be where we need to be with our children if we did not really look at their social, emotional, mental, and behavioral health. You can't separate that from the child. The child does not separate that when he or she comes to school. So for that reason, our student services department, the supervisors, specialists, and of course, Dr. Brown taking over as both academic and student services all of that is now pulled out of the admin and directly in instruction where it should be. A couple years ago, we heard behavior, so we got behavioral coaches at the elementary level. We have behavioral coaches at other levels. We also have the board-certified behavioral analysts, BCBAs, who work with children, work with teachers with children. We pulled them out of admin and put them in the instruction budget, as well as the secretaries that support them. So that explains that big decrease in admin. Now, we moved those folks to instruction, so what we wanted to do was move some of the money to follow them to instruction. So that's why we're requesting, can that $705,000 kind of follow those folks over into the instruction zone? So that explains the shift in the admin budget and why instruction goes up from that end. If you go to technology, so one of the things that we did, we built this budget in, I want to say December, January, and we're looking at it again in June. So we have the benefit of actually looking at in real-time personnel and what our needs are. So when we looked at technology and we looked at the number of personnel that we have, there is a reduction in the actual budget for technology. So if you're on page 3, that first line, you can see personnel services went down, and that's based on our June personnel. And then what Ms. Capazzi was doing with all the benefits is actually using our June projections to get closer to benefits. In the past, it would be safe to just say, if we're going to hire somebody or have somebody, let's budget for family benefits. Because we're so budget tight, we're trying to budget for actual benefits that the staff member is taking, with the hope that maybe they don't change it next year, and then budgeting in the mix for new staff members coming on. So you will see a small decrease in technology, and also that money following to support the folks who are in instruction. So that being said, our numbers in 3 categories don't match up with what City Council approved. And my understanding of that is that because it's categorical funding, that should this board say that's the direction that we want to go in, that we'd have to go back to City Council, and perhaps I'd write a letter to the city manager requesting that this be on an agenda so that we can move the money into the right categories should we want to do this. So that's a procedural thing. But there's a big piece in here. When we looked at instruction and we tried to understand how the council came to their number of 74 million. And again, not having conversations ahead of time where they sat down with us and said, we're looking at this, is this right, is this where we're going? We're guessing on the back end as to how they may have done it. To the best of all of our eyes, and all of us have done nothing but really look at this from the HR department, finance department, Dr. Wodeka, Ms. Pugh, myself. It doesn't look like they've budgeted in the 74 for everybody who's actually in instruction. So we think it's short just because they haven't included all positions that are in instructions. We know that they included teachers, and then there was something done with an average on that. But to the degree that we're sure that all of the instructional assistants, that we're sure that the substitute teaching budget is in there, that we're sure that the stipends that we pay teachers to teach an extra class are in there. And then folks who are in the instruction budget but don't have the category of teacher, like a school counselor, are they in there? We're just not sure. And quite frankly, we did not have the time in our day to sit down and try to back analyze the work of someone else. But we do have a plan. One of the things we do want to do, and we think it would be very important to do early, is to sit with the city finance team and really work side by side with Donna Witt and her team, Karen Capazzi and our team, and cross-check each other as we build the budget so that we make sure these are all the people we're counting. Does that match up with what you think? And then we'll get to a place, if this is the the formula that city council wants to continue to use, then we can go into it, making sure that we have accurate numbers and we have cross-checking on both sides to make sure that we don't get to the point where we're here with that. So let me just finish all the big pieces and then I'll come back to that. That being said, if people are missing out of this budget, which we think they are, we have a couple choices. We could go back to the pyramid and try to cut some more money off that pyramid so that we can make up for it. We could, and we didn't touch too much of the instructional vacancies, and we don't want to do that because we know that we need those. Or we could use CARES money to kind of offset that. Only, I'm looking at Dr. Gupta, that is not a solution. That is just a slide to have that same conversation this time next year. Well, actually, that same conversation come August of this year, because we need to start earlier to say, are we counting the right amount of people? This proposal that you have in front of you is based on using CARES. It is the least hurtful one, I would say. It doesn't require us to go down the pyramid and do some drastic changes. It doesn't require us to now look at the vacant positions, at if there's a second grade position open and we know that school needs that second grade teacher, we want to make sure they get that second grade teacher. But I repeat, it doesn't solve the problem. It just buys time. It is not, and I'm going to quote Dr. Gupta over here, it is not a sustainable answer to anything. But it does allow us, if council's willing, to sit with the finance team at the city and really look at if this is going to be our formula, then we can work at it starting in August and make sure that we have it right, rather than having it handed to us in March and trying to backfill into it. Okay, so I put out a lot, and then I can take some.
But you did quite well with that, and I was able to follow you from start to finish. Now, as we stated, we'll entertain questions and thoughts, starting with Dr. Day.
So, in the instruction category, you've explained that based on your speculations that city council may have overlooked some positions in their number, are those same positions still being overlooked after you've transferred money from? So they're still not covered either way?
No, they wouldn't be. So we would need to use CARES funding to cover anywhere from about, depending upon the position, about 40 positions or more that we're looking at.
Do you have any just very rough idea of how many dollars that would involve?
Probably close to $4 million or so dollars. So.
Okay. That was my question, and you answered it. Okay.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Day. All right, others, Dr. Gupta.
So we are maintaining 1547 under this plan.
Yes.
Now, what you're saying is you're using coronavirus money. How much of that? Because under the new debt deal with the president signed, they were sending $30 billion of unused coronavirus money. And they don't specify where they're going to suck up that money from. But my assumption is all that money unused till that date, when the president signed the bill on last Sunday, will be gone. So if that's the case, what will we do from July 1st?
Well, and I don't know how the president's signature and what's unused, because
It says $30 billion of unspent money from a previous COVID relief bill signed by Mr. Biden.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying what we were proposing to do, because we have some money that's encumbered in CARES that we would swap out, whether it's that, if it's encumbered money, then yeah, we got to go back to the drawing board and look at that pyramid and start cutting.
So how much is the dollar amount of coronavirus money in this?
In here, it'll probably be somewhere over, what did I say, about a little bit over 4 million, between 4 and 5.
So basically, we are underwater by $4 million, and we are temporarily filling with a fake elevated cash of $4 million, which we don't have.
That's exactly where we are. And again, the board has options, because you can remember last time we gave you, not a fan of. I really wanted 1550. but I'll take 1547 because I think that that's important. We also gave you a 5% option, which is not a lot, and you know, we talked about what that might do to folks who are making $12 an hour.
My fear is this money will evaporate and you give people $15.47 minimum, and the city council doesn't appropriate a dime more in the future. I'm just hypothetically thinking. So we are in a situation where we got to rescind all those increases or cut further down.
Find something else to cut.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we are heading in a direction where we think, you know, no cash, lot of flash. We know we are poor. We were trying to pretend we got money and we can hand it out, dole it out to people. You see where I'm going?
I understand exactly what you're saying, and that's why we're sitting here right now as to the very real possibility of it's not a win-win at all, because 1547 helps us in retaining staff. It helps us in recruiting. It keeps us in the ballpark. We're by no means winning the ball game, but we're at least in the ballpark. If we go lower, down to a 5% or even lower, because we could do minimum, I think it's 2.5%, then we just have to match that. That will help us on the actual dollar in, but in terms of the recruitment and retention, we create other problems. There's problems no matter how you look at this.
I'm just.
You may continue.
I mentioned the disclaimer, hypothetically thinking. I don't want people to come throw shoes at me. But you said $4 million of coronavirus money, right? And last time when we looked at your pyramid, about $2.3 million saving from one school closure.
Yes.
So hypothetically thinking, two school closures is about 4.6 million. So if that, I hope it doesn't come, but if that comes to that, then that's the mindset that you may be able to balance it out.
That's why it was on the pyramid as a possible, although unfavorable option that we could do if we had to.
And those 2.3 were real dollars, you know, it means not reallocating from one place to other, and we still have a cost structure.
Now the cost of running a school is a little bit more. That was our estimate, so it's a little bit lower because we still have the kids from those schools, so we would still need staff to fill in wherever we would move those children.
So you will have the capability in mid of the year to take the coronavirus money out and replace it with that savings, if that comes to fruition.
You're not painting a nice picture for me, Dr. Gupta, but
But I'm just,
yes, yes.
I'm worried about
I-
making a commitment to give Mr. Trost a $5 an hour increase, not knowing that I can afford that money on an ongoing basis. That'll be disservice and dishonesty to him. You know what I'm saying? I should be able to sustain that raise I promise him for the years to come, maybe higher, but at least that much.
All right, Dr. Day and then Dr. Brennan.
Well, in response to that, if need be, we could at least just be honest with the employees that this is a situation we face, this is what we want to do, but we're victim of circumstances and we just don't know what the future holds. And then secondly, apart from these potentially overlooked positions, these categorical amounts, both the city's amounts and the suggested adjustments here, those do meet the city's total. Now, I assume that you've arrived at those by taking advantage of some of the things on here, but not any school closures yet. Which this just goes to your point here, that
We also, just for full transparency, we did not touch the community partnerships. So the money that we use to support our partnerships with Ed Foundation, VCIC, those things, we also did not touch. We tried not to touch tuition support that we have for our students that attend the Gov School. Now, granted, there's some agreements in that, but we do pay tuition for that. So we didn't touch those things. We didn't touch the bus driver. Remember, there was on there to reduce some of those bus driver positions because we didn't think we would get enough bus drivers, physical bodies. We didn't touch that either. So those things are still on the table. But as we met, we really felt strongly about if we don't do something to increase the take-home wage for most of our employees, we might not have a lot of employees at this point, particularly if the surrounding places are at least doing 5 or 7 or more.
So are we being asked to approve this tonight? Where does this stand as far as our approval?
This is for talking. We're going to have to bring back the budget for actual approval once we get the state numbers. But this I can actually send over to council, because we don't even know if council will entertain this as an option. I can send a letter to the city manager. We have not asked for a different total amount, just a shift in 3 categories right now. But this is also dependent on state funding being at the governor's level.
I understand there's a lot of ifs.
There's
Yeah.
this,
Dr. Brennan?
I've got several questions, if I could take one at a time, if that's okay.
Sure.
So, on our pyramid sheet that we had under central office, there was a suggestion to cut 15 positions or vacancies. I had trouble keeping up, Dr. Edwards, with your list of positions and vacancies for administration. How many positions were actually cut, and how many positions were switched from non-school based to school based from the administration?
Okay, so let me do the 15. So 7 of the 15 were either rift or vacancy reduction. There are 8 positions in our original, what we thought we could do, that we couldn't do because they were in tech or they were in admins, but 15.
Right.
When
I'm
you-
sorry, were you saying 7 were cut?
7 are, yes. So we have 3 rifts and 1, 2, 3, 4 of the vacant positions that we definitely, actually, 5 vacant positions that we cut, although one's a part-time, so,
Okay.
okay. When you look at the ones we moved out, let me see if I can get this total for you. So 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 25, 31, 34, 35, 36, 36 and a half positions.
Were moved from administration to the base schools. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm double checking my math, so.
So how many?
Y'all can help me double check my math too. I'm
Yeah,
checking.
and this is a question you might not understand, but so how many does that leave how many would start with in administration, how many does that leave in administration?
So what that would leave in administration is the HR department. So they have about, and I don't have the whole
Yeah,
list off
sure.
the top, but
Okay.
I don't know, maybe 6 or 7.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Finance department. How many do you have?
In total, I think it's like 10.
Okay. My department, so the 3 of us, your secretary, my secretary, and then Chuck and, well, Chuck's not even included, and Chuck's is still in tech, isn't he?
Oh, that's right.
Chuck's in tech. So Tina, you can't forget Tina in our department. And then community relations and equity. So we took out, the PI liaison comes out, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4 left in that department?
Yeah.
4.
Okay, so the biggest change was taking the 36 positions out of central office and moving them into schools. That was 36, was the largest change.
Yeah, that was the big shift
Right.
of change the conversation so we
Right,
can
sure,
stop talking
okay.
about them.
So, what, 2 or 3 years ago, we went to city council and talked about using CARES funding to help subsidize teacher salaries and the virtual academy and things like that. What funds and/or responsibility do we have currently in CARES fundings, which will end in 2024 currently?
We haven't talked about the virtual academy because they have been completely funded in CARES
Right.
up until this point.
Yeah.
And again, our goal was to migrate as many folks as we could into our existing budget without being like adding to it in such significant ways.
Right.
We have a discussion with the virtual academy coming up just to talk about that and some plans that we have for that. So that's still a possibility. But go back to what you said.
Yeah.
In 2020, right, with 2022, when we did that move, it was at a time where when we had the sales tax issue, so our budget was cut
Right.
at the end of one year, cut at the beginning of the next year, and then it was, well, you have this CARES funding that you could use as a sort of a stopgap for that point, but we knew it wouldn't last
Right.
that long, and we're here. We knew eventually it would run out. One of the things that we didn't, and I don't think anybody estimated, we all thought, we just need 1 year's of CARES money to get the kids back on track, and they'll be great. And some of the behavior, you're seeing the long-term effects. So where we had behavioral coaches that we thought, oh, we might not need them for that long, or interventionists, there are some other positions in there, they're still working with kids. Now, we've gone the other direction. So this is the part I do want to brag about, because we don't talk about this. We always talk about the revenue that's be gifted to us by the state and by the city, but we don't brag on the revenue that we actually go out and get to support ourselves, which I think is important. And, we've done that with the solar, we've done that. And granted, some of it has a match, but some of it is a real savings to Lynchburg City with our school buses and the work that Dr. Brown has done with those grants that he's received to help and support that. And we've talked about being more aggressive about getting additional funding, revenue grants, and applying for everything and anything we can to support ourselves. So there is some of that goes along, but it gets to be scary when you start using grants for people, but we really don't have too much of a choice right now. So.
Let me try this, phrase it another way. If we had, this is our home finances, what debt do you think we will have in CARES funding in 2024
Yeah.
without this piece?
Well,
what we have already?
I would love to say this is our home finances. So let me start with that, because in most homes, if you are dually funded, let's say it's a dual income house, very rarely would one person whose income comes home and says, guess what, my boss gave me a raise, and then the next day the other person comes home and says, my boss decreased me because you got a raise. Right? That doesn't happen in dual income homes. That happens with us. So if state gives us more money, then we get less money on this end, which in essence means we just keeping you where you are. So with inflation, with the increase of salaries, if we're going to be kept where we are, think 5 years from now, we're not going to be in a very good business, because we can't sustain being kept where we are. So I don't have an answer for that to say what's my plan or my strategy, because eventually we're just going to be so tight we can't afford raises, we can't afford the people and things like that, if the goal is really just keep us somewhere down at 38 million or whatever it gets.
So I'm sorry, what you said is totally correct. My question was probably not phrased properly. What CARES fundings are we using currently that we will run out of next year? So in our next year's budget, or LCS next year's budget, that we will have to go to City Council and say, we supported ourselves for these 4 years. We showed you that graph with the red bars and the black bars. We're now back. What will that be approximately?
So oddly enough, we just met today talking about these things.
Great.
And so we have about 65 people who will be running out of CARES 3, 30 who were already there, 35 who are going from CARES 2, and that's around $4.7 million. And then this will be in addition to that.
Now, this meaning what, Dr.?
This $4 million that Dr. Edwards was talking about.
So we have a debt of about 4 million plus already sitting in our account, and we're talking about adding another 4 million to it, and then thinking we'll go to City Council next year and say, we've been really nice, you've been really nice, we now need $8 million, which I have a lot of trouble
We're not thinking
Yeah,
that
yeah.
at all. We're presenting the board with options. We're
Yeah.
trying to show you where
Sure,
we really
sure.
are
Right.
to say that, and we would be remiss if we didn't say, you could do this with CARES.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same place where we were before, where you could do this with CARES. Or you could decide to close the school,
Mm-hmm.
if that's where we are in terms of doing that. So as far as us being happy, hopeful, I don't think anybody on our team is happy or hopeful. We're just trying to be as strategic as we can in terms of what are our options
Sure.
going forward. And we don't know, like, we went into this budget year thinking we were going to be working on a funding formula that I had previously shared with you all. And that's where I was like, oh, if we use this, then we'll be here. That didn't happen.
Right.
And then in March, we're given categorical funding. So, and we had to backfill into that. So that's where we are right now. We do have some tough decisions to make right now because what was given to us is not enough to maintain it the way we have it right now this year.
Yeah, sure.
Dr. Brennan,
Yeah.
Dr. Gupta seems to be wanting to say something. You still have the floor. Do you
Right.
want to let him share? And
No,
then you
I'd
still
like
have
to
the
keep
floor.
going, okay, because I'm trying to, and I appreciate Dr.
Okay,
Kuba's
all right.
opinion, but so, my point is that I'm obviously clearly not being critical of anyone in Lynchburg City Schools the way we're managing the budget. We want to do it properly, but I just want to clarify for myself, and I think for other board members, that we already have a debt in CARES funds, which Dr. Gupta has pointed out back when we did this appropriately. We got that debt already. Now, a little bit to my surprise, we're saying we're going to, because it's the first time we've heard it, it's not, it's secret, that we have another $4 million that we're now committed to CARES, which will run out at the end of 2024. So I think that's concerning. And one of the points I'm trying to get to is two things, then I'll stop. One is that there are other options on your pyramid
Yes.
other than closing schools. And one of the options is to do, as you have said, just do the $15, 5%, that will save us $4 million. You don't do anything at all, that saves us $6 million. I mean, I think, we take this on as this is our problem, what it is, but, we didn't cause this problem. City Council listened to a lot of people, come to them and say, if you cut the real estate tax and don't get funding, the schools are gonna suffer for that. And I think what we're trying to show, and hopefully conversation with City Council Finance will also clarify that, is that that's the state we're in. And I think rather than going into debt further with CARES funding, we need to deal with the other options that we have, is my opinion. And I'll yield the floor to Dr. Gupta.
So with all due respect, Dr. Brennan, 2 years ago, somebody was shouting through the roof that please don't go in that direction. And you were among the other 8 other members who voted for us to go in that direction. So it's not fair to blame and ask the superintendent that it's concerning. It should have been concerning at that point in time. And what we are doing is doing a Monday morning quarterback and trying to see that that decision was bad, which was still made by not many of these school board members were there at that time. And she's repeating what mistake was made at that time again. But my point is, it's very easy to come and blame her now that it's concerning, but when we were part of the problem, because the superintendent doesn't make budget decisions, school board does. And the school board told her it's okay to put $3.2 million of fixed costs in coronavirus money. And they were clapping and rejoicing, and not knowing that it's not sustainable, as she points out all the time. It was told at that time it's not sustainable. So if it was not concerning then, what changes the position now to make it concerning now?
Can I respond to that, Mr. Chair?
Oh, please, you must certainly respond to Dr. Gupta's comment.
First of all, I want to clarify that I am not criticizing Dr. Edwards or the administration or anyone. I think we're all on the same team. We all want the same thing for our schools. We all want to do the right thing. So that's number one. Number two is, I think I've learned my lesson. I think that 2 years ago or 3 years ago we did that. I think in retrospect it was not the right thing to do, because it did put us into this situation where we knew we were going to have to come back to City Council. We decided to do it, and I did vote for that, as did the majority of the board. I think what I'm saying now is, let's not do that again. Let's not repeat what we did before, because I think it's not the right thing to do. I've learned my lesson from my teacher on the other side of the table.
No, but the problem is, we are in a deeper hole now. That 3.2 needs to be fixed before we go into another $4 million. This $4 million could be fixed in the short term as we move into fall semester and make some difficult decisions. But that $3.2 million
Still there.
will be, I don't want to use the word cancer, will be there, which will be difficult to surgically take it out.
Right.
And that action will stay on shoulders of this board, not on the shoulders of the superintendent. I just want to make sure it's clear. It's not superintendent's decision, it is the school board's decision.
Yeah.
She just follows what the school board told her to do, 8-1 vote, to go ahead and convert those $3.2 million in coronavirus into the fixed costs. So it should be concerning to the superintendent for what the board did, not concerning for the board now to do a Monday morning quarterback to tell her it's concerning to continue doing that.
Thank you, Mr.
All right,
Chair.
thank you. If anyone else have any comments, and you all see how nice I'm being? I'm fine with me. Do you, anyone else have anything else that you want to comment on while you're thinking? Anyone else?
I got one more question.
Go right ahead, Dr.
Dr.
Gupta.
Edwards, on this pyramid, how much saving have we achieved as of date today?
On the pyramids, hold on, let me catch up to you. So we reduced the 1550 to 1547, so that's close to 3 million as we were projecting. Here we go. Your cuts we took out, so that's small, 34,000. We weren't able to do all 15 positions, so I have to get a total on the ones that we actually were able to do on that. And remember, we stopped right there once we got to the 1547. We didn't go down very far to any more of that pyramid. So I can calculate that total once I figure out the total number of positions that we were able to move.
And Ms. Kapachi, if you can repeat those numbers, I wrote down 65 cares positions, and what were the other?
I think she stepped away.
She stepped out.
Yeah, she stepped away.
Oh, she stepped out.
Yeah.
As she was, on Dr. Brennan's question, she gave those numbers. Would it be possible to email us those numbers?
Yes, we can do whatever.
So that way we know how much money and the dollar amount for the cares, where it's,
So
how it's broken up in terms of positions. I think she wrote down,
yeah, she's coming back. The other thing that we still need to keep in mind, even with the governor's budget increased our budget by $4.3 million. City council reduced our city funds, or they didn't even give us level funding.
Right.
So I appreciate your question, Dr. Brennan, but honestly, where I sit next year, I could be told by city we're cutting it $5 million. And you can ask me the same question again, what am I doing about it? I'm working with it. I don't control the revenue, I don't control any of that, but we are less than level funding when the state has saw fit to give us $4 million more. And we're not even seeing all of that $4 million from the state. So we are definitely working with lemons and lemonade here, trying to do the best decision. We presented to you all the pyramid options of what, and there was a lot on there, and I know we shocked you all, but that's where we were in terms of this is what we need to do. We had not presented you at that work session with anything regarding CARES, but at the work session, you all didn't seem like going down that pyramid was an option. If I hear you today saying, go down the pyramid, cut the tuition, cut the this, that, and the other, I'm going to agree with Dr. Gupta. You guys are giving us direction as to what you want to happen. We have to present you with options, and even if you don't like the option, CARES is not an option that I like, but it is an option that is available, that needs to be presented, even though it is not one that any of us like. But ultimately, the decision rests in the 9 of you coming together and saying what we need to do.
Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
And I said that before, each year we come to the school board, I feel like a panhandler looking for money. We are lousy managers of money. That's what people tell us. So what could we do? Is it possible to change the structure and let the city be the fiscal agents of the money? So what you give to the city employees, you give it to the Lynchburg city employees. So we don't have to beg for every dime and penny year after year. Let them manage the money. Is that allowed in the Virginia code? Is it?
Let me, Dr. Gupta, you were doing a good job articulating your thoughts, but I do want to say, and I don't think we can deal with that tonight, but I'm concerned about the fact that Donna Witt does a fine job over on the other side. But we have a capable, and I'm really not responding to what you just said, but, we have a capable finance group, and we have really sharpened our pencils, and I remember several years ago, I don't need to repeat all of that, the fine work of our superintendent in so many ways. But I'm troubled by, and, I'm troubled by the fact that with this categorical funding and where we are, that it almost looks like a takeover, and I don't support that at all. And I just want to go on record with it. Donna Witt does a fine job over there, and Kim Composite does a great job on this side. And I'm concerned about that, Madam Superintendent, it seems like to me the board is going to have to go through another whole unclear process to get anything done. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Yes.
Yeah, what
Until we get some, we're working on not knowing state numbers. But we're working on not knowing state numbers, and even if we got state numbers, the way that this is given to us, our state numbers are assigned to us. So even if, let's say, state says, comes in great, we get, what was the Senate budget, I think was the better of the two when we were doing something like that. But even if the state increased funding, the council is gonna allocate it where they see fit. And they could do whatever they've done based on how they've done that. So it makes it very difficult to plan for a budget now or even next year when there are so many variables.
And I do think that 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 more years down the road, when all of us are 9 years older, looking good and doing well, that we're going to hear people who are going to critique what is happening now and saying that that was not good for anybody in the city. Time will tell what that will say. But I do want to just be clear. I appreciate Dr. Gupta, Dr. Brennan's comments. Are there any further comments? Dr. Edwards, you can't answer this, and I do agree with Dr. Gupta. I'm not trying to put any blame on you, but equity habits is huge. And I'm sure that you can't answer that tonight, I'm not asking you to, but what is our plan going forward to make sure that equity habits and that type of work continues to move forward? I continue to be concerned about the achievement gap and how we're dealing with that, as well as just how that will work. Even with this board, I'm off topic now, Dr. Sinha, you can tell me to shut up. But I would say that even with our discipline committee, we may need to do away with how we do discipline committee work and focus more on academic work to do what we need to do. I'm shutting up because I'm getting all off the point, but I am making a point.
Thank you. But you deserve a snack.
I deserve a snack, okay. All right. Guys, you got to give admin, this is incredible work. It's a lot of hours, so staying up. I don't know what else to say. Doesn't appear we can do anything about it tonight. Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Anything else on this matter?
It seems to me that we very well may find ourselves with the back against the wall. And we have to do something on Pleasant. And the one thing on here that seems like it resolves most of the problems is a couple school closures. Now, nobody likes that, but that would resolve it. And we don't know what's going to come out of the facilities study. It could recommend that. We don't know yet. But I'm just saying, there is a option here that takes a lot of the pressure off That's all I'm saying.
Let's not jump the gun right now because we have a task force of facilities.
I know,
So we
I
don't
know.
want to undermine their work.
I know. I'm just saying that,
That'll be the ultimate nuclear option.
yeah, it's the nuclear option, yeah.
All right, I do want to move us along. Dr. Edwards, is there anything you need from us tonight, now that we've discussed this, as far as direction is concerned?
I think what I need is just to understand how the decision will be made. So if you all say, wait till you get state numbers, wait till it's finalized, wait till city council gives us whatever new categories if state numbers change, and then bring something back to you all for discussion, and then you'll give me guidance to do that, then I will wait, and we won't do anything else to it. But I need to know what the group wants us to do and how you all want us to function and operate, because I don't want us to get caught out there and then you're all like, well, what did you decide? I'm like, well, we're going to need to schedule a meeting to come back and do the work.
All right, wait, hold on. Dr. Sinha, do you have any thoughts about this committee-wise, or, and I'm not putting pressure on Ms.
Well,
Sandy.
no, but my observation is, and I think I mentioned this in an email to Dr. Edwards, that if we can, so we have the categorical funding that city council imposed on us, even though their share is under 50% controlling share of all revenues. It's kind of audacious if you think about it. But we have that as our scaffolding and our structure. If we can take the bricks, if you will, of how we already do our budgeting and organizing of records, and brick by brick, jointly, and in a mutually agreeable way, put those bricks into that scaffolding. So we're all clear, we agree, these go here, this goes here. Then I think we have a way to work forward to appropriately fund things. And so no assumptions can be made, no accusations of oversized bureaucracy, things like that.
Is this what you mean by the brick?
This is, but even down to a elemental point possibly, but certainly this. But it would require us, as you said, meeting on good faith to make sure that the categories where we're putting things is what we can reach an agreement with city council that that's where that belongs.
So,
Which is what should have happened in the first place initially.
Mr. Andrews, were you getting ready to say something?
No,
Or was
sir.
that Reed? Okay. All right, Dr. Gupta, Dr. Day.
There are too many hypothetical missing variables right now. So we issued the contracts, right, for 1547? They have not.
No, we don't, we need direction.
Right.
I mean, the best we could do right now, because we can't reduce people's salary, is just freeze salaries, which I don't recommend doing, but that's where we are right now in terms of if there's no, we can't issue contracts that say we're gonna do 1547. I mean, it'll say contingent upon state blah, 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 blah. We'll have that language in there. But that's a commitment that the board is at least moving in that direction, unless this board is saying, hold up on 1547, we might be down at 5% or frozen, but I need to hear what the board is saying, because that's gonna kind of direct what we can do with that. And we were hoping to get contracts out by June 15. Staff is done, so.
The last meeting.
Well, our work session is not until June 20th. Is it any business related to this that we were hoping to accomplish at June the 20th work session? What I'm fishing around for is we could spend multiple hours. If we need to take a 5-minute break to refresh your minds and come back and do this, but I think the superintendent is trying to get some direction that I am not sure if we fully understand what she is actually asking, unless somebody would like to comment on that. Now, Dr. Brennan, do you have something to say?
I'd just like to, I was gonna say, I think the similar thing Dr. Sinha said when Dr. Edwards asked the next step. I think the next step is what you've suggested, which is to meet with the finance folks at the city and proceed, as Dr. Sinha is saying. This is what we're seeing as far as the numbers that you've given us and what we have. This is what we have done. Do you see this similarly? I think that's the next step, to try to get their side of it and have a conversation with them.
All right, do you want to respond to that, Dr. Edwards?
Well, we were always going to do that, but I can tell you where I'm sitting right here. What I hear you say is, don't use CARES fund. So we're not going to do that. What I heard Dr. Day say is, we possibly have to close the school, right? And then there's silence on this board. I'm going to be honest, there's silence. We're sitting here, we're listening, but we're not speaking up as to a possible of, and I could bring you something like what we did today, and y'all go, oh, no, don't do that. But I really do need voice now. I need to know, like, if there's something on this pyramid, then you need to say to me, Dr. Edwards, whatever you do not go down to the blue. Don't do blue. Take that off your list to do it. Or all of this is possible, bring it all back to us. Because we will entertain cutting tuition. That's a real live option. But I can't get a read from you all, so I'm just kind of bringing things in the dark, trying to figure out where to go, and I'm getting like different pieces and parts.
I want to hear from Dr. Gupta and then Dr. Day, and then I want us to strategically try to see how we can resolve this.
So last time when we met at Heritage, I thought we had a vote and we agreed that one variable which will stay intact is 1547, right?
Right.
We had different motions to go 5% freezing, they failed, and 1547 stayed. So to me, that becomes the base, that 1547 minimum will stay. Now, what will it take to reach that destination? That was left open. That could be going through this pyramid and, as somebody was saying, cut it all out, but there's no compromise on 1547. So what we need to achieve there, that was left open, if my understanding is correct, based on them.
That was not my understanding, Dr. Gupta. I think you're absolutely right on the 1547, but I think the board made decisions to eliminate some other items as well.
I'm pretty sure we voted also on school board and central office.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I'm
the
just trying to make sure that.
Yeah, and we kept the 1547 is what we all
1540. So
voted on.
what I'm
yeah.
saying is to reach that goal, whatever it takes, so the couple of elements were taken out. If more needs to be taken out, we can move in that direction. But I don't think, personally, just for me as an individual school board member, a disclaimer, that 1547 is up for compromise. You know,
Wait, did you say something, Dr. Day, yet?
I have something to say. Wait,
Go ahead,
wait.
and then Mr. Trost, go right ahead.
So, I will try to give you what I think my answer to your request for direction is. One, I agree with Dr. Brennan, we need to clarify about these potentially overlooked positions. That will change the bottom line here we need to see in the instruction category if we need more money there to cover that. Then, once we know what the new bottom line is, we go through this. We've all agreed that we want to stick with the 1547, but I think we just keep going as deep here as we need to go to get to where we need to be, even if that means cutting or closing some schools. If you don't want to close schools, you're going to have to come up with an alternative to that. And unless somebody has an alternative to that, we're going to have to close some schools. And we may be pushing the schedule on the facilities thing. We may have to tell him, we need next month to know what your recommendations would be that would include closing schools, because we have a timeline here. That would be my answer to your request for direction.
All right, very good, Dr. Day, in terms of your point. You stated that with clarity the last time that we met over at the high school. Dr. Edwards, I thought we were, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, we were $7, $9, or $8 million. I thought with the 1547, that brought that down to a particular number Then we took out some admin stipends from the board, and that took it down to, what number are we at now that we still have to reduce? That's where my thinking is, that this board resolve those matters to get us to a certain amount that we still needed to deal with. Is that the case, or something changed since then?
No, it didn't change.
Okay.
Well, what did change is we weren't able to use all 15 positions from the admin.
Yes, ma'am.
So that number got decreased because of less,
So what is that number
less
now?
positions. Well, it'll take us in between like 4 and 5 million in cares to supplement if we did nothing else.
And we're hearing tonight that there's a thought not to use the
Yeah,
CARES.
yeah, so that's
And by
about
the way,
it.
and then we're coming right to Mr. Trost and Mr. Andrews, but let me just ask this. We don't have to worry about returning any money, correct? Of those CARES monies, or whatever monies, there were deadlines on when they had to be returned. We don't have to return any of the money, is that correct?
Not unless something crazy happens
Yeah.
that we don't know
I
about.
just want to make sure to understand that. Mr. Trost and then Mr. Andrews.
I agree. I think the 1547 is off the table for me as well. I agree with Dr. Brennan. I hate to be using that CARES money, but it does get us a little more runway to perhaps make some very difficult decisions.
Buys time.
It buys some time. Because I want to make the right decision from the facility study. I don't want to rush it. But unfortunately, with the cards that we've been dealt by city council, I think our back is up against the wall. And that's what we've been given, and we have to deal with that, and there's gonna be some very difficult decisions. And I know no one on this board wants to make the wrong decision. So as much as I hate to have to rely upon that CARES money, because I really think it is kicking the can down the road and getting further into debt, I think we may have to use it just to buy some time to make the difficult decisions that we're probably going to end up having to make ultimately, just because of budget constraints. But I do think the 1547, I really do not personally think that should be on the table, something we could hack.
Thank you, Mr. Trost. Mr. Andrews?
So in terms of time, you need to put contracts out pretty soon, right?
Right.
So, but you need you need direction on 1547.
Yeah, if we're solid on 1547, because that's why we brought this
Yeah,
back,
yeah.
then we can do that. Then we just need to figure out how to
Right.
pay for it if we're gonna do that. So.
I'm good on 1547. We made the commitment. I don't want to go back on that.
I
I think that's extremely
everyone's
important.
there on
Yeah.
1540.
So I'm good with that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Andrews. I appreciate that. Dr. Brennan?
I just want to clarify my position, that my understanding was this was a conversation about different options, and I am not set on not saying CARES funding or anything else. I was bringing that up just for clarification things, so I just want to say that.
And I understood that. I mean, it was very prudent to make
Yeah.
that point, because we cannot.
But I'm open-minded about what we need to do in order to get where we need to get to.
All right. Distinguished members of the board, we have had an excellent presentation from the superintendent, well thought out and presented to us. I think I need to be clear, Dr. Edwards, when do you anticipate the board being able to make, when things get trued up? We don't know what's happening with the state. We're guessing or assuming. But what I'm trying to figure out, and at least through June 30th, do we have to have our budget approved by the end of this month? Yes or no?
That would help us. Yeah, well, we can't have it approved until we get the funds actually approved. So
Yes,
you've
ma'am.
already met your statutory, the first one, before March 30th, or April 1st. So we've done that. Now we're just waiting for the solid funds from the appropriating bodies, which we know, well, we kind of know where city is. We don't know where the state is.
From your opinion,
I would like to get it done. So once I have money, I would like to be able to call you up and just say, we need to have it, another meeting, let's get this.
so
approved.
that might require either to settle this on June 20th work session or a call meeting prior to June the 30th. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, but there's an extra wild card because it's not just up to us. So, for example, when we get final state numbers, we either have to wait for city council to tell us how that goes, or we come up with something to present to them and ask them, can we do it this way? There's another body in the body, that we have to deal with.
So.
I wish I had
It's
clean
not-
answers
it's
for
not-
you.
It's not because Dr. Edwards at all, so this has nothing to do with what she just said, not one thing. But I am just as confused as I can be right now about the process, because there are variables that we can't determine. I'm asking, does this board, as it is currently configured, need to make a decision by June 30th? I hear the superintendent say, we need it to happen, it should happen, but even then, you may not have what is necessary to do that, going back and forth with the governing body called city council.
Correct.
Huh?
The state numbers are not clear
Yeah,
yet,
I
so
got that.
there's no way she can balance
I
her
got
budget.
you, yeah, but even, but she's saying this other layer still has to happen with going to the council and so forth. So, and I don't think the board is ready tonight to do much beyond saying we support 1547. Unless somebody wants to speak up. The superintendent, Ms. Preston, you have anything you want to say on this piece?
The only
And I'm
thing,
not putting you on the spot, but I'm just trying to make.
I'm not putting you on the spot.
Don't not put me on the spot. Don't not put me on the spot.
you know I'm already mad, right? Anything that we say, it sounds like we're putting ourselves in a situation where the control is out of our hands, so
That's
to speak,
correct.
because we're divulging what our plan is, and I don't think that's wise.
Right.
So I agree with you. I think that the 1547 is something that we need to adhere to, but unless there's somebody that's on city council that's going to say, and if you do, this is what's going to happen, then we're kind of between a rock and a hard place. We don't know what's going to happen next.
All right, Ms. President, that was very helpful what you just said. Dr. Day, and then.
So I would say we should assume that the state's contribution is what we've estimated it to be at this point. Now, we realize that may well change, but we should proceed on the basis of that. We should also proceed on the assumption that regardless of what the state's contribution is, the city's contribution will stay the same. Now, if we find, and proceed with all planning based on those assumptions, realizing that if either of those two assumptions turns out to be wrong, we will have to come back and submit a revised budget. We may have to have, we'll have to have a clause in any contracts that go out that talks about availability of funds, so that we're in a position to adjust the contractual payment amounts to our employees. But I think we should proceed with those two assumptions, and if those assumptions turn out to be wrong, then we have to revise everything. But at least that allows you to move forward, issue the contracts, and maybe even that helps us with city council if say, look, we have already made these commitments because it was the best we could do with the information available to us.
Well, it allows us to issue contracts, but it puts people in a position of saying, you know, they're not giving me information that I need in order to hold my job, so I'm going over to Campbell County.
They're already in that position.
Well, it's gonna
We're not
get worse.
changing that.
All right, here's my recommendation for us to consider. Based upon what Dr. Day stated, the variables, if we assume and set them in, they're subject to change, and this group could come back and revise. We're down, if we're doing the 1547, whatever else we've done, I'd still like to know the number that we still have to reduce. If we take a 5-minute break and you all come up with your thoughts of how we get the rest of the way to a budget that's balanced, or whatever the appropriate term is, we can do that tonight. If you don't feel that way, I am suggesting that we would be ready to have a call meeting for sure, if we can't settle this on June 20th. What are your thoughts on what I've just stated? Somebody that seems to say anything, let's take a 5-minute recess. We'll come back. I think that that was a good break. And I do want to acknowledge, I don't know exactly what the time length on the discussion that we had prior to the break, but I think that everyone has had an opportunity to comment on this particular matter. We have heard what the superintendent has presented to us as her recommendation. Rather than going around. Okay, well, I'll rewind and start over. I'm thankful that each of you have had your break. I certainly feel refreshed after the 5-minute break. Prior to, I don't know the length of the time of the discussion, but we've had a lengthy discussion. Everyone has had an opportunity to weigh in. We've heard the recommendation from the superintendent. At this point, I would simply want to see if there's any board member that has a statement that he or she would like to make about this matter so that we can determine whether or not there's anything we can do tonight or to move on to another night. Is anyone who would like to make a statement? Dr. Gupta.
In my assessment, I think we should approve superintendent's recommendation, which he came to use the 4 million coronavirus money right now, knowing that it'll be short term. It may swap out with other savings we may realize in next few months. And that will give her a little leeway to work on what you call the, what did you use? The little board?
Miles and runway?
Yes, more miles on runway.
Line runway.
And, but knowing it will not be permanent, it'll be a short-term fix right now till we see what comes out of the facility study report. Could I make a motion to that effect, sir?
The floor is open for such.
I make a motion to that effect.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and properly moved by Dr. Gupta for the record and seconded by Dr. Day that the board would approve the recommendation from the superintendent that $4 million, et cetera, whatever the exact number is, from CARES money would be used, and that at some point this would be revisited.
Knowing it's temporary.
Knowing that it's temporary and will be revisited. All right, any unreadiness, Dr. Brennan?
So I just have to say that based on Mr. Tro's comments and the options that we have, I think closing the schools is not a reasonable option at this point, that I think using the CARES funding, if that's our only option, is a reasonable thing to do.
Thank you, Dr. Brennan. Any further discussion on the motion?
And just again, just as we all understand, we're bold, asterisk, asterisk, this is a temporary solution. It has to be revisited, and we're gonna have to deal with it.
Yes,
And I think everybody understands that.
That's part of the motion, the word temporary is part of it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Trost.
And 1547 is in there, right?
All right, so I want to make sure that our very capable clerk is the one that is recorded the motion. Could you repeat, and we'll fine tune it, Madam Clerk, if necessary, the motion that you have in writing at this time?
Dr. Gupta made a motion that we use CARES money, and Dr. Day's second, and it was approved for 4 million, or whatever the number may be, from CARES money, and it would only be temporary.
All right, the maker of the motion, are you satisfied with that language?
Yeah, this is a temporary infusion of cash.
I use that word, I like that's a fancy word, infusion. Put that in there. All right, any further discussion on the motion? Madam Clerk, please call the
School Board Member Ms. Preston.
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Trost.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Day.
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Andrews.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0, 1 absent.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and thank you, Board, for the motion, and that passes, and we'll move forward accordingly. All right, we're now in new business, and we're in J1. Dr. Edwards for budget reappropriations.
Okay, we have done this a couple of times since I've been here with budget reappropriations. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Wodeka to explain what is in there and some other possible options that also may come up.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Edwards. So as any hopefully good organization or well-managed organization does, we try to end our fiscal year with a little money left over. In our case, for unspent funds, sort of operating funds that can be used for a variety of things. We're about around 2% of those funds. What we'd like to do is talk about a number of primarily one-time costs the transfers that need to be made in order to address these sort of second and third priority kind of items. These are things that we've known about, that are lots of conversations about as a school division, but just simply don't make it into the budget from year to year just because there are limited resources. But when we end the fiscal year, we hope that there's some leftover funds to kind of get back to hopefully usually these one-time costs. So what we've done is we've identified 3 sort of general areas, that student experience and school beautification. So one of the things that I like to say is that the second most important thing that we do is provide a great place for kids to go to school. So we've identified a number of investments that we think can very much help that. I won't read them all to you, you can see them, but I'll just point out a couple of components of this. Is we have, over the last couple of months, spent some time doing custodial assessments in the schools. If you've been in some of our schools, there is a pretty significant concern about cleanliness in a number of places, and what we found is that there's a number of schools that are lacking certain equipment to maintain the buildings. And so what we, a number of things we'd like to do is to buy the appropriate equipment for our staff to be able to, simply as getting cobwebs down and things like that they'll have. And so those things are missing, as well as painting supplies and other sorts of things that are there. The other items, the second sort of set of items, are related to arts and athletics equipment. So these are very student-focused and student-athlete and are student focused in thinking about how we can replace some musical instruments that the school owns. You probably have heard from some of our parents and perhaps even some of our teachers about some of the condition of our musical equipment and our musical instruments in the school division. So we'd like to replace some of those, as well as make some upgrades and improvements to the high school and some of the middle school weight room and athletic equipment that's out there, and a couple other smaller items as well. Operational items, these are sort of division-wide components. You'll see there the local share of some upgrades that are needed for the school buses, the electric school buses, as well as on the buses, the replacement of the cameras on the buses. So these are the student-facing cameras. One of the big challenges we have, and one of the concerns of our principals, is that it takes a long time in some cases to gather camera footage, and so that's because a lot of them are really old and they have to actually require a physical presence in order to do that. So we'd like to, on the existing fleet, change them out. Of course, the new buses will all have newer camera systems on there as well as a couple of other items on that list. You'll see an item, Aruba technical system, that is the very last item. About 1.6 million of that is E-rate money, so those are funds that can't be used for, they have to be used for sort of technology kinds of components. So the total reappropriation, and this isn't necessarily how we're transferring money, but the total amount is $4.4 million, 2.8 million of which is actual sort of local money. So we're at about 2% of those operating funds for the year that we just need to reappropriate. You'll note that the total transfers, that's sort of the next table down, is $3.2 million. That relates to just money the amount of money that has to be transferred. There's sufficient funds to do some of the things, but we wanted to be transparent about where we're planning to spend some of these funds going forward. So certainly we take any questions you might have and any ideas you might come about with.
Dr. Day.
The transfer money is the last of your charts here. Do I understand right that's the sort of unspent money that you want to move to spend on the various items that you've listed?
That's how we're moving money around to get to where we want to.
So this is, that's where it's coming from. The preceding charts are where it's going to.
That's right.
Okay. Couple questions about some of the specific items. The replacement of musical instruments.
Mm-hmm.
What happens to the old instruments that are being replaced?
Well, in some cases, they've been destroyed, and nothing.
They're
can be done
trash.
with them, right?
No.
Otherwise, they may be sold, but particularly after a middle schooler spends
they're
some
pretty
time
well beat
with the
up.
cello, it's not going to be there. But if we can sell them, we certainly will, or we'll,
Donate them to.
repair them also.
Yeah. That could be used in other places, yeah.
Then the last item under athletics and arts improvement, reline volleyball and basketball courts at Heritage High School. I wouldn't have expected that to cost $34,000.
It's pretty expensive.
Yeah.
So
for lines painted on the ground, it seems awful expensive.
Well, and it's a particular kind of paint, and that has sealed and done a certain way. That's the quote that we have for it, several quotes.
It's just, I'm surprised at how
Right,
high that
absolutely.
is.
Yeah.
The operational items, the local share of the electric bus program, is that a one-time expense?
It's one time, yes, sir.
Okay. All right, and then the total, or at least the approximate total of the amount that you're moving to cover these end-of-year expenses is about 3.2 million, is that right? Okay. The last question I have is, at the top of this, you said the end-of-year balance is primarily due to vacancies that remain unfilled, and then that, this last chart here seems to tell me that the vacancies are like the first three items, the instructional salary, instructional benefits. Are those the dollar amounts that you would describe as coming from on-fill? Okay, so according to my calculations, that's about 78% of the total. So I just wanted to put a number with most, or primarily due. Primarily due means about 78%.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Day. Any further, Dr. Brennan?
So, Dr. Orca, can you help explain, so is this sort of a guesstimate for the fund balance for this year, looking at what our expenses are and what we usually would have in September or sometime after we've done the audit? Is that
That's
kind of
yes, sir,
what
that's the
we're looking at?
projection. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. That's the projection based on where we are now. So we have gotten through most of the school year. It's based on who we know we're gonna pay or not pay, and that's kind of where we are. So
Right.
we put what we call a freeze, sort of in April, so we stopped spending where we could, and so that way we could get that number a little sooner, hopefully, and we'll get that number as close to balance as we possibly can.
Right, sure. So the comment I have is that I think that these things that are listed are important. I particularly love the musical instruments, which, having had a guardian that was in the band and big fan of Suzuki, it's great to have that. It's been a need for a long time. The concern I have is that it is coming from the salaries, staff salaries and staff benefits, where this is coming from. And we have, I think, consistently made such an emphasis that we are so concerned about our staff retention and our staff benefits, and we work so hard for salaries, that I have a little trouble taking the funds from leftover in their account and not using something to their benefit, and not using it just on stuff. You know, city council at one point said we want things for people and not on stuff. There's a lot of stuff on here and not a lot for people.
Yeah, so,
Is that something that we could think about?
well, you're never gonna get me to argue with paying people, right? And that's the most important thing that we do. And certainly, if that's the direction that the school board would like to go, that's certainly something we've talked a lot about, different investments in staff that we'll make. We had, a long conversation about it tonight.
Sure.
When I am concerned, frankly, about the condition of a number of course, musical equipment, instruments, as well as some of the athletic equipment that's there, just from a safety perspective. So certainly that's up to the school board. These are simply a recommendation from us to make sure that our buildings are clean and that students have the equipment that they need. I think probably teachers would suggest that they need the equipment that we're talking about.
Sure.
But certainly, giving money to staff is great. So.
Sure. Could I just follow up with saying that the items that I'm wondering about are under operational items, the local share of electric, or the buses. That is, what are we providing, what are we doing for those buses? Because that's $774,000.
Yeah.
And I know you mentioned the Aruba technical system. Some of that is already dedicated to it, but there's some left in that also. But those are the areas I'm looking for as far as, there's some there that we can use.
Sure. So in the Aruba, there's about 1.6 million of that is E-rate, so it can't really be used for other things.
Yeah.
So that leaves about 500,000.
Right.
The local share of the electric buses, it's the upgrades that we wanted to make, plus just the difference between the costs of what the grant will pay for and what the bus costs.
Mm-hmm.
So the alternative plan was to use capital, leftover capital funds for that. Of course, we'd like to use those for repairing the leaking buildings and those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of where we are with that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think the bus is going to be hard at this point since we've ordered the buses.
So I'll just leave it at that I think that there's a lot of stuff on the list, and I wish that we're taking the money from the staff account anyway, as far as their account, so I wish we could do something for the staff such as retaining bonuses for people who are coming back, signing bonuses, other things that would actually help us retain staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brennan, for your thoughts. And Madam Clerk, you can certainly put down about those thoughts about the bonus. That'll be for another board to decide. All right, go right ahead, Dr. Gupta.
That's the same idea came to my mind. So I picked up the phone and I said, I need to visit. So this morning, my first trip was to EC Glass High School. And I've never been to their weight room. And I entered the weight room. It looks like my grandfather's weight room. It's antiquated. It should have been fixed long time ago. The flooring is coming off. The building outside, the room outside is leakage on the walls. The mold is building. There's a lot of deferred maintenance in that place. This is one of our premier high school. When these kids go to a basketball game in Richmond, we don't call it stuff. We all clapping there and following in them in the car to their destination so they can win games, but not the type of weight room they have. We can maintain that going forward. And after I left with a deep broken heart from EC Glass, I said, we got a brand new Heritage High School. Maybe I need to go in there. And Mr. Beatty, I took his permission. I said, look, I'm intruding in your place. Could I go see your gymnasium? He said, yes. So the lines are not visible. It's the deferred maintenance has taken a toll on that floor. The wood on the basketball court is falling. Hardwood floor in your home, there's gaps that need to be fixed. So these maintain, the basketball, the bucket, is the bucket they call it? The broken, they try to replace, swap them, but there's still two of them without those buckets. So what I'm saying is I'm giving you a very micro level example of what I saw in just only in two schools. Then as I was at Heritage, I said maybe I should go to elementary school down the road. So rang the bell. They were not expecting a guest to show up, and I said, could I see Miss Anderson? They said, who it is? I had a tough time explaining my name, but anyway, I got in. And I went to the dining hall, and they used the same dining hall as an auditorium. And I have visited that before, but never saw that. I thought they had a temporary wall. You can push it in. No, she got a little curtain, a plastic curtain. You understand? This is the state of affair of infrastructure in our schools, and I visited only 3, and I'm planning to visit more schools as we go on. But to me, deferred maintenance is taking a toll, and you and my kids have been there. Future kids are coming in there. So we have done 1547 this year. So we have taken a step forward in terms of salaries. I think it's now the kids deserve a better learning environment. Technology funds have been cut. I didn't see any upgrades on technology for new budget, and I kept my mouth shut. But seeing the state of affair at that weight room, that needs to be torn down. I went to the tracks at EC Glass today. I normally walk with Dr. Coleman the Heritage High tracks, and I used to think they're lousy. But looking at EC Glass, I said, EC Glass is worse than Heritage High School in terms of track. That needs to be torn down and resurfaced. I'm not saying do it right now, but you look at that infrastructure as you visit and compare, it is in need of repair. I will not say despair, but it is. There were 2 families walking around. They said, are you going to do any changes here? And we said, yes, sir, we are thinking about it. So the people who, community uses those tracks to walk just like we do at Heritage. So I just wanted to give you that little snapshot of this visit this morning, because I thought there were a whole bunch of stuff. But I have a question for Dr. Wadika. Is there any other money could be used from coronavirus, like your Aruba 2.1 million?
Well, so for the Aruba, I think the 1.6, the E-rate money really pretty much has to be used for that.
Has to be used.
I think, we'll leave $500,000. We've tried, because of the budget situation, we're trying not to spend on other things we don't need to spend. We're going to talk some more about some other CARES money in closed session tonight. So maybe, but we could look at that.
The reason I asked that question is because we never see athletes coming here making public comments and saying, made my place better. In 5-6 years, I've never seen it. I see this. I went there today at Heritage High School. I knocked on the door, and I was told our wrestling program is one of the top programs. And The coach came in and he said, I'm doing well. I said, but your floor is coming up. He said, we can do fine. We can replace the wall and fix it. That will provide me a little bit of more space. But that's not gonna happen if we don't put that money in there to be able to do that. And that coach, I'm guaranteeing you, is doing it because the stipends are not there in summer. Do we give them some stipend? There were about 15 kids in that room with the coach who's deeply committed and involved in making the wrestling program excellent. I see tennis coaches all the time out there. So these people are working hard, but they never ask and complain here. So squeaky wheel doesn't take the ship. We should be doing for these kids who are not coming and complaining day in, day out, that provide me better training facilities.
All right, thank you, Dr. Gupta. Dr. Day, did you
I
have?
was just going to make the observation that we were chastised by City Council for deferred maintenance in the past. So I think we ought not to defer these maintenance items further.
All right, Dr. Watercould, thank you, Dr. Day. Is there any time sensitivity? I know this is, unless I'm mistaken, this is the first reading. It needs to be done, it's annual. Is this something that's time sensitive and/or does the board want to go ahead and approve this tonight, or are we waiting until our work session?
At the risk that my motion always fail, I'm gonna make a motion. And, but I'm going to make an addendum to Dr. Vodka, your plan, forgive me for doing that. That Aruba $500,000 you have on top of the E-rate will move to the athletic program.
Okay.
So the athletes, I really felt today that we left, your daughter plays sports, right? No?
She never complained about the lines, but it's okay. She didn't complain about anything either, because you're right, our athletes do not complain.
Yeah, they don't. They just do it.
Our music people do not complain. They march with what they have. Yeah, thank you for that, but we do owe them the best we can provide for them. I mean, our students don't complain.
Can I just say this?
Well, I have a question. Is the 500,000 the local match?
The switches. It's the switch project.
Right,
Right.
but you've got the 2.1 million and then the other is,
The 2.1 is the E-rate portion, and then the 500,000, the 500,000 is switches. The E-rate is access points. Both of those are division-wide.
okay.
So maybe Ms. Pugh can
But the-
explain what they
Well,
do.
and the
with
500,000 is not E-rate, it's operating.
Yes.
The 1.2 is
Is
E-rate. Okay.
A lot of your custodial stuff could be bought through coronavirus, right? That's environmental protection.
Sure, but we're trying to use that money to address different other issues, right?
The reason I'm saying is because this is one-time expenditure, and we don't want to shortchange when we move in the direction of improving those training facilities. As I was saying this morning, it needs to be, when it come out, at least have the state of the art. What we make changes at EC Glass should not be Band-Aid, should be,
Do it right.
yeah.
Dr. Gupta, please make your motion. At this point, you make your
I
motion.
will make a motion to take 8,000 out of student experiences to athletic and arts improvement, and whatever beyond the E-rate is into the athletic and arts improvement. Is 500,000? Did you do that?
It is. I think we would be remiss if we didn't mention that the 500,000 pays for the switching, the changes of switching. So the technology in the division plays a tremendously important part of instruction. So I would not want us to not invest in those things, because I feel like that might be an additional deferred maintenance down the road, where we don't want the internet switches to not work because they're not gonna.
I'm saying it's a one-time expense, right?
Well, it's a recurring expense.
Over several
Over
years.
several years.
Yeah,
So
so
this is probably the cycle of the replacement of the switches that are, integral, vital part of the internet and the technology systems working across the division.
So you need 500 right away in this year one, or do you?
I don't know if you can answer that better.
I don't know, because I haven't seen the plan, but I'm assuming, and I don't want to take a lot of time to discuss E-rate, but that is federal funds that we apply for. And there's two categories. Category one is just some basic aid that we get for our internet services. And then category two are things such as your, wireless infrastructure, your switches and your servers, those types of things that you can use to replace those. As part of that application process, you have to be very specific about what you're going to replace and what vendors you're going to use. So that $1.2 million that was awarded there has to be spent on very specific things. The $500,000 is coming from operating, and my assumption is that as he's replacing the Aruba technical system, he's also counting on those switches as being part of that upgrade, but he's using $500,000 from operating to do that, to make this whole project doable, complete.
I think the last thing you want is a wireless network that can't access the internet, right?
All right, thank you all very much. Dr. Gupta, do you still want to make your motion as presented, or do you want to?
Where is the 500,000 you're talking about?
The 2.2 million, 2.1 million has a local portion of 500,000.
So that number's not listed here.
It's the Aruba technical system, it's under operational items.
Yeah, I see 2.1 million.
About 500,000 of that included in there is operational. Of the other 1.2 is E-rate funds that we have to use in a certain way.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to assume that Dr. Gupta's motion is going to die for a lack of second if I ask one more time.
I'll second his
Do
motion.
you want to make the
I've not
motion?
clarified my motion yet,
But please do so, sir.
because I was going to put a minimum amount for athletic and art program, and I'm still debating what should be. It's 993,000 in this proposal. And looking at the needs today, and I'm not an architect, but the needs will be higher than 933. So my fear leaving that place was we don't want to shortchange those athletes in terms of improvement. You see what I'm saying?
I understand.
Where else could we get savings? When I left that place, as I was generating, it'd be about $1.5 million we'll need to do what needed to be done. So where superintendent will get about $500,000, so.
So I just want to clarify one thing.
Yeah.
So these are end-of-year funds, so they need to be encumbered by June 30th, right? So I think it's going to be hard to do all that in athletic equipment to get it encumbered by then. I think that's going to be a concern.
Could you do what was, you have?
I think, yeah, for sure we can do
We
it.
can do this,
Yeah.
but it's just that extra 500,000 that's going to be done.
So if
Can I
you,
just, I'm sorry.
yeah.
Can I just clarify? I did just hear from John Collins, who is our director of IT, and he says the 500 in operating is, for the switches, is making that whole project complete. So if he's not able to buy the switches, then what he's using the internet, and he may be on, I don't know. John, if you're on, you might want to speak, but I just got a message from him. He may just be watching and not participating. So without that 500,000, without the 2.1 million total, he can't complete the whole project.
All right, thank you, Deputy Superintendent Pruitt. I do see you, Mr. Tross, but just to follow protocol, I want the board to understand that Dr. Gupta was attempting to make a motion.
I made a motion now.
What is it?
The approval of,
The 3.2?
yeah, well, as presented by the superintendent.
So no other modifications? All right, so we at the total fund reappropriation of 3.2 million. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Dr. Day seconded. Any further questions or discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Scoop up member Ms. Preston.
Yes.
Scoop up member Mr. Trost.
Yes.
Scoop up member Dr. Sinai.
Yes.
Scoop up member Dr. Brennan.
No.
Scoop up member Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
Scoop up member Dr. Gupta.
Yes.
Scoop up member Dr. Day.
Yes.
Scoop up member Mr. Andrews.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0, 1.
Thank you, Board and Madam Clerk. All right, J2, federal grants. Dr. Edwards?
Okay. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Pugh to talk about the federal grants.
All right, there is a presentation linked, and I don't know if we're going to bring that up or not, but if it's not on the screen, you can certainly follow along. This is just an overview of the applications for our federal programs for 2023-24. On one of the first federal grant is Title I, and the purpose of that is providing all of our students significant opportunities to receive a fair, equitable, and high-quality education, and to help close the achievement gaps. the allocation, the anticipated allocation, I should say, is $3.8 million. And so under ESEA, school divisions need to use their Title I funds to improve these outcomes for students. How we allocate them, the use of these funds at the division level, we have homeless education staff, foster care liaisons, social workers. We also have some teaching and learning coaches at the elementary level that are division level staff. You can see some of the school level uses, literacy coaches, literacy teachers, instructional assistants, and then a big part of Title I is also family engagement. And so some of those funds are used for family engagement liaisons. Again, some other positions that we have. There's also a set aside that's, these are not positions, but these are set asides that are required. There's a delinquent set aside, and this is a percentage that's required from the federal government. We're also have to keep 1.8% of our grant for indirect costs. We use some of those for professional development. And then, as I mentioned, there's a huge component for family engagement. So Title I, Part A is the first grant. The second one is Title I-D, and it's Subpart 2. And this is around improving educational services for children and youth that are identified as either neglected, delinquent, or at risk. And our anticipated allocation there, you can see, is $3.8 million. And again, these are anticipated allocations. How we use them in Lynchburg City Schools right now, stipends for academic tutors, contracted services for mental health, medical, dental, equestrian therapy, those types of things. And again, you see there's an indirect cost that's we're required that 1.8% to keep at the division level. Title II is around preparing and training, recruiting high-quality teachers and principals. The allocation that is projected is $536,000. We have made the decision, and Ms. Capazzi can elaborate a little bit more if needed, to transfer these Title II funds are into Title I. And typically, our Title II funds have been used for professional development. And you can go back where you are, sorry. And Title I has been used for staffing for closing the achievement gap. And so as we are increasing salaries and maintaining benefits for our staff, we want to make sure that our staff that are being paid for out of Title I funding, that we have the adequate funding. So the decision has been made to move that $536,000 from Title I, if it's all allocated, from Title II into Title I for the coming year. All right, the next one is Title III, which is around our English learners. And so the purpose of this is for us to provide effective approaches and methodologies for teaching our English learners. The allocation here is about $25,000. We use these for stipends for staff to work outside of contract time, for some supplemental software, again, for professional development. And again, you'll see that indirect cost, that 1.8%. This one does have equitable participation of private schools. So private schools do get some allocation of this grant as well as some of the others. And then we use some of these funds to support outreach for our ESL families and to engage them. The last of the title grants, or the federal grants, is Title IV Part A. And this has three areas: well-rounded education, in school conditions for student learning, and then improving the use of technology for academic achievement. And our anticipated allocation is just a little under $300,000. So the well-rounded, we have to put a minimum of 20% towards that. Safe and healthy students, which is that learning environment piece, we also have to put a minimum of 20% there. And technology, there is no required minimum, but we typically have allocated some funds for the area of technology, which if you hadn't gone in the past, I encourage you, I believe it's on August the, I want to say maybe 8th, attend Textravaganza. It is one of our biggest conferences, and those funds from Title IV help to support that. And again, you can see some of the uses here of our Title IV funds. Some of it's used for staffing, much of it is used for professional development, and some is used for supplies. You do see here that the equitable participation of private schools is 25%. So this is one of those grants that private schools get a larger portion of that. So I know I went over that quickly, but again, these are the grants that need to come to you as a school board for approval before we can submit them to the Department of Education for approval.
Thank you, Deputy Superintendent Pugh. Dr. Gupta.
Just wanted to bring, there was just a shooting half hour ago in Richmond High School graduation.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
7 wounded. Hope we keep in our thoughts and prayers.
Richmond, did you?
Yeah.
Richmond, city of Richmond.
Yeah.
Huguenot High School.
Huguenot High School, I'm very familiar with all of those schools. Yes, you're correct. And that is why this work that we do and the work we're doing here in Lynchburg it's really important. And thank you, Dr. Edwards and administration for the fine work you're doing in that regard. Is there any questions for regarding this, Dr. Day?
Yeah, I have a handful of questions. If we could go back to page 4 of the presentation. So this is use of the Title I, Part A funds. The third bullet says professional development. So is the professional development that's being referred here specific to the uses of Title I funds? In other words, could this be used professional development for the board? Or is this, yeah, so it is, the professional development that we're talking about here is development.
Professional development of teachers and staff to,
The purposes of Title.
Right, for the
Yeah,
purposes
okay,
of-
that's what I assumed, but I just wanted to clarify that it wasn't sort of general purpose. And then when you're, this is now page 7, where it talked about funds being transferred from Title II to Title I, does that put additional restrictions on the uses of this fund? Are the conditions under Title I different than the conditions under Title II?
we are allowed to transfer funds from one title grant to another, is specifically between Title II and Title I. So some of those funds from Title II, and Title II again is specifically around professional development and,
Training,
training
recruiting.
teachers and principals. So we will use some of that when it's moved to Title I for professional development, but the majority of it will be to sustain our current staffing that is in Title I fund. in the
So that
Title I.
actually maybe releases the bounds on this.
And
use of this
it is
word.
allowable.
Okay. And then a couple of places you talked about equitable participation of private schools. This was under Title III, and I think it came up a second time. So can you explain to me
I can.
what those equitable uses consist of?
Part of the conditions from the federal government is that some of these funds that they, that are allowable and allocated to the public school system also have to be available to any private schools within the division. So we meet, and I say we, I shouldn't say we, Christy Compton, who is our grant supervisor, she has met in the past with each of these, the private schools in the area, to ask them if they would like their equitable amount, and it's based on a calculation that I don't have in my head, but I can certainly get it to you if you'd like.
I'm just trying to understand the
And they
meaning
can-
of it.
They
yeah.
they can use it, but they then have to use it for the same thing that's outlined in the requirements of the grant. They can deny it, and in which case it stays with us, but they do have, access to those funds. We don't have any private schools in the area that have denied their funds. They take them, and they take all of it. Now, the one caveat is, if that school closes, all of everything that they have purchased with grant funds comes back and belongs to Lynchburg City Schools. So we do all of the purchasing
for the private schools. So anything that they purchase with their funds is purchased through Lynchburg City Schools and then is delivered to them. It's marked property of Lynchburg City Schools, because if the school should close, it comes back to us.
Okay. And then on page 10, third bullet talks about improve the use of technology in order to improve the academic achievement and digital literacy. Is there anything more specific you can say about that? How is that technology used to improve academic achievement and digital literacy?
It could be, in this case, professional learning for our teachers on how to use technology and I think at this point in Lynchburg City Schools, we're beyond the device itself, but, how to engage and make curriculum more rigorous and relevant with the use of instructional technology. So it might be purchasing things such as, just television displays or interactive displays, but we've already done that and utilized other funds.
So at this point, for us, it's more training rather than.
It is more training.
Rather
It is
than
more
equipment
focused on
purchase.
training.
Okay.
We do use it for Techstravaganza, which is, as I mentioned, the in division. It's the largest technology conference that's put on by a public school system in the Commonwealth. But we also use some of these funds to send some of our school staff, our school teachers, as well as our technology staff to some conferences.
And then my last question on page 11, I think there were two places where the well-rounded designation comes up. What does well-rounded mean here?
Well-rounded is, it's to improve students' academic achievement by increasing the capacity of our, well-rounded is for, it's for student services. So it's where we're looking at our social emotional. So we're looking at the whole child. So part of it is for academics, and the well-rounded piece is for academics. The safe and healthy piece is for the social emotional piece. So together in this grant, we're looking at the whole child. So well-rounded is, I've got good instruction, good academics, we're focusing on the achievement gap. Safe and healthy students is we're now focusing on that social emotional aspect, which Dr. Edwards has talked about and shared with you, I think, the pyramid that we got at the fiscal governance training about using our budget for not only instruction, but also for that other side of the social emotional.
So does it mean a balance between the academics and the social and emotional? Or are you saying well-rounded within academics and well-rounded within the social and emotional?
The well-rounded piece, and that's really hard to say, the well-rounded section really focuses on instruction and academics. So those funds could be used, again, for professional development. It could be used for staffing, for like an instructional coach. The safe and healthy portion of these funds is to be used for things that are related to social emotional student services. And again, it can be allotted for professional development, it can be used for staffing. So there's a lot of leeway in how we use it, but some of it has to be used for instruction and academics, which is the well-rounded piece, at least 20%, and at least 20% has to be used on things that relate to student services, social and emotional health.
I think you've explained that the best you can. What else?
You look like you're still.
Yeah, it doesn't,
Right.
I'm not criticizing you, I'm just having a hard time
I will get you
understanding.
some more information.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Day. All right, Dr. Gupta?
I think you need an action on this, right? You need to apply for this,
Yes, we need to submit these,
make a motion to make it an action item.
All right, we're moving this from discussion to action, if there's no objection.
My second motion today.
Very good. There's a second to the motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Dr. Day. And so these federal grants as presented tonight, we would approve them and send them off for process. Any further questions or discussion on the matter? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
School Board Member, Ms. Preston?
Yes.
School Board Member, Mr. Charles?
Yes.
School Board Member, Dr. Sinha?
Yes.
School Board Member, Dr. Brennan?
Yes.
School Board Member, Dr. Coleman?
Yes.
School Board Member, Dr. Gupta?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Day?
Yes?
School Board Member Mr. Andrews?
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
All right, and the last item under new business is our tentative 23-24 school board dates. And I hope the board will appreciate administration wanting us to be very clear going forward. And so, Dr. Edwards, if you would.
Yes, so we have tried to predict what we think would be school board meeting dates, work session dates. We also threw in there the agenda prep dates because the chair and vice chair attend agenda prep, as well as what I heard us talk about earlier in the year was doing more joint city school meetings, not just the one right at budget time. So there's already one scheduled for Tuesday, August 8th. Stuck another one in January before we get started, really in the budget season. Then, of course, we have one in March. That's the budget one that we have. I picked the dates that were already on City Council's work session schedule to just put those out there as tentative. School board retreats, we put 2 in. One in the fall, which is the one that we do typically with the administration to get the year started. And then, of course, one mid in February, we put one just to kind of follow up on where we are on some things. And then the existing committees, we sort of outlined some dates for committees based on much of what the work they would do, like legislative advocacy does a lot of work before the breakfast. And I think one of the things I heard was they didn't have enough meetings before the breakfast. So we put more meetings on that end and then flip-flop with finance and facilities. These may all change as we move into the reorg meeting, but at least tentatively there are some dates available. New school board member orientation is moved up earlier in July and August rather than in September, just because we need to get the board up and running. We're going to have a lot of projects with the facility study, a lot of decisions that are going to have to be made. So the sooner that we do that, we can get that up and running. And then there were a couple of things that we missed that we may want to make sure that we do. We did reduce the overnight travel in the board's travel budget, but not all PD because you have to do some PD. So we usually do a governance training sometime in September. I put some tentative dates. I can check with Gina. And I listed the convention dates. That's still up for later discussion. And then based on past Southern Regional Annual Network Forum, which is our region, those dates are in there as well. So I may have moved some of what Tina originally sent to you as a Tuesday meeting just to make room for either a joint city meeting or some of these meetings as well. And I really wanted to put them together on a very comprehensive list because we do have several new folks who are applying to be on school board. It's important that they kind of see this and know that the commitment, and it is a tribute to the work that you all do, it's a heavy commitment in terms of the number of hours and work that you do. 2 things in specific I want to just pause on. We always do the regular reorg meeting in July. That first work session immediately after everybody is seated, I'm suggesting be our reorg work session. And that's where we will revisit those topics such as, do we want to do the discipline committee the same? Do we still want finance, facilities, legislative advocacy, or do we want an academic committee? We have 4 advisory committees. What are the charges? What do we want our advisory committees during the year to be advising us on? And also just how the board operates, makes decisions, and that kind of stuff. So it's sort of a built-in retreat, but just for board work and business, not the stuff that we do with you during the retreat, where we come in and tell you this is what we do in HR, this is what we do here and there. But it really, that second meeting after everybody's seated, we can use that as a time to kind of group and set expectations and do all that stuff there. So those are the, I just put those out there tentatively. Any of those dates can change and be revised. And they're not up, you don't have to approve them, just wanted to list them.
Dr. Edwards, you continue to amaze me. I have not seen, and maybe some of the other board members, and I have not seen this type of listing of everything right in front of your eyes so that you can appreciate and understand the amount of work that we are putting in and helping others to understand it. So thank you for that. Dr. Gupta.
I think you.
Or Dr. Day.
Yeah, I think there's a couple changes to this that we ought to consider. You're talking about, and I agree with kind of getting the reorganization and stuff done earlier. And I would suggest, for the benefit of whatever new board members will be joining us, it would be helpful to have an even earlier meeting to explain to them what's going to happen at the reorganization meeting. Because I know that I was very confused at our reorganizational meeting, not understanding the process for selecting chair and vice chair and those sorts of things. I would suggest an even earlier, maybe an additional, maybe just a brief meeting on July 6th, perhaps, just to explain what's about to happen to them, and tell them what's coming at the reorganization meeting so that they can think about it before they need to take action on it. I think as a new board member, it would be helpful if they understood what's coming so they can think about, oh, we're supposed to pick the chair and vice chair, and think about, well, okay, what are the criteria, so that going into that meeting, they're prepared to make an informed decision. That was one thing I would suggest. Another is, could we move the retreat even earlier too? Because if we're talking about committee structure and organization, if we could get the retreat, or at least a part of the retreat, into July, so that those committees and organizations can be settled so that they can begin to function in August, rather than, if we don't form them until August, it'll be September before they can do anything.
The retreat to do that, or I called it a reorg work session, because that's the July 25th meeting. So we won't bring any work session, like admin won't bring work session work to you all. That is your time to like get your committees and get,
Okay, so that would happen at the what you're calling the reorganization.
yes, that's what I call it.
Okay.
We can call it a reorg retreat or whatever. It's not on a Saturday. It's probably from 4 to 8.
Yeah, okay.
Or 5 to 8.
Well, then my third suggestion is, because city council is, how do I say this nicely, taking a more interest in our proceedings, particularly budget, and we have found ourselves needing to be at city council meetings when they're deliberating things concerning us. I would like to propose that we move our meetings from Tuesdays to Thursdays, so that we are free on Tuesdays to go to city council meetings, and we conduct our business on Thursdays instead. That way, we would not have the problem we had a few weeks ago, where we basically shut this meeting down and referred a huge portion of the agenda to the future, so that we could go over there and sit there while nothing happened because there was the threat. But my point is, can we make our meetings on different nights than the city council meetings by simply moving them to Thursdays? That would shuffle your entire schedule, I know, but I have a reason for suggesting it.
Well, Dr. Day, I must say I'm very impressed with what you have just said over the last 3 or 4 minutes. The new orientation or whatever for the new board members, I really like that idea of moving that up earlier so they can understand process. This board, Dr. Day has put something out that I have not heard in my 9 years on the board.
Something.
But change is a good thing. And I heard a scholar recently say people really don't have a problem with change, particularly if it's needed. It's the transitioning, handling the transitioning process that disturbs most people. So have you given any thought to the transitioning process? That's a lot of transitioning that would need to be done to move from both meetings to Thursday?
Yeah. What we traditionally do on Tuesdays, I'm suggesting we do on Thursdays
What
instead.
level of difficulty does that cause you in the administration, Dr. Edwards?
It's just a matter of us all looking at our schedules. I recognize that folks have, like, I have Thursday night, you have we have.
I have Thursday night.
We have
committed.
Thursday night things that we've committed to that, I mean, we'll make what we.
And I think that's probably true. I think many of us that sit on this board are involved with lots of different things, and so it's gonna mean that we're gonna have to change
Meeting, we're not meeting.
our schedules for whatever other thing it is that we're involved with, and that's not necessarily gonna be an easy thing to do, and is gonna impact other people too. So, I think it's a great idea, but I think it's gonna be something that's gonna be difficult to implement quickly.
Another way to do it would be, instead of moving Tuesdays to Thursdays, just stagger the weeks, so that the week city council meets, we don't meet. When city council's not meeting, we do meet. Try to alternate, try to alternate.
Now.
It is right now.
It's
That's the way it is.
Just during budget season.
Oh, it's just during budget
Same
season?
meeting during budget season.
Okay.
I don't want the board to lose sight on what I think to be a very brave statement that you made. I don't know whether we can resolve that tonight, but I would be interested in the board looking into that and seeing. I think School Board Member Preston is very correct. The transitioning, Dr. Day, is where this would have to be worked out.
So explain to me the transitioning, is
Well, I'm just-
because of how it would impact other things that are already scheduled? Is that?
Moving from Tuesday to Thursday is a change.
I just
So
change
how
it
you
on my
consider all
calendar.
the
I don't-
transitioning that has- And people feeling good about that process. It's not very easy, you know.
Start of the weekend.
Is there an expectation for us to be at council meetings on Tuesdays?
Mr. Andrews is bringing up a good point. You state your point again so that everybody can hear you.
Would there be an expectation for us to attend council meetings on Tuesdays?
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just making you free to attend if you choose.
Would you want to do that during budget season only? I really like that.
It may be that this is
See what
something
board
that the next version of the school board needs to decide, because it'll be mostly the same group of individuals as here, but there will be at least one, potentially more.
Hopefully just one, yeah. Dr. Dukoff, you look like you want to say something.
No, not on this issue. I like it, but I can see the complications in this whole, maybe, when I hear you transitioning, as I was trying to tell him, could be, the second year, first year could be looking at all the other schedules are aligned. Next year's schedules are maybe already be in place. So when you use the word transitioning, I'm assuming you're saying, let's look at it, but maybe a year out, so that we have some time to transition into the new calendar, if the board thinks this is the appropriate. Am I correct in putting words in? I don't want to put words in.
Absolutely. So can we go with this budget, not budget, calendar, no, not budget, calendar, and then after reorg, if the new reconstituted board wants to look at making adjustments, they have that freedom to do so.
So the other suggestion was July 6th, short meeting. Is that doable?
I just need to figure out the how of that, because usually that first meeting on July 11th, because no one is officially in charge, I run it, and then I turn it over to whoever is elected the chair. And
At that point, we won't have a chair.
right, but don't we swear them, don't they do something that we
We
swear
have
them
to
in?
take an oath.
Before July 1st.
So if we have a meeting on July 6th, if it's a meeting,
What I'm picturing, it's not a decision-making meeting, it's just informational for the new people primarily. That's what I'm imagining, yes.
As mentioned in the past, what's happened frequently is that the current chair and vice chair will meet with those new people before that July 1st date to sort of introduce them to the system, kind of talk about what you're talking, give them a little
Yeah,
intro.
that's what I'm,
Yeah, I mean.
so
that's-
you're
that's
saying
what's happened in
the
past.
two of you
Yeah,
might
I
do
mean,
that.
Whoever did, it had to be before, we go off, before July 1st. And it sounds like the timing for the appointment might be pretty late.
It'll be very late.
Yeah, so that may not work this time, but that's what's happened in the past, is those people come together and just got a little overview.
Well, I mean, one of the things we can do, because technology is, we can say, please watch last year's reorg meeting so that they at least have an understanding about the flow. Anybody should be able to do that. And then, I mean, we always reach out informally to try to get folks ready. It could be something that I could just talk to them about.
I'm just trying to be sure they understand the decisions they will need to make at the reorganizational meeting. That's my purpose.
Gotcha, yeah.
But thinking about those two ideas, that's a good plan, because there's no reason why that couldn't be something that was communicated, via technology, because the process isn't going to change. The people might change, but the process isn't going to change. So somebody like Dr. Coleman, or who is not necessarily going to be on the board anymore, but he knows the process. So to talk to those of us that are brand new about what the process is, this is how often you're going to meet, and these are the things you're going to need to do, and all that kind of stuff, that could happen. And
If we can
and it's
accomplish that
available.
without a formal meeting, then that's
Yeah.
fine, I think.
And then those of us who forgot what the process is can go back and look at it too.
Get a little review, huh?
Yeah.
But before we move on, I do want to commend you, Dr. Day, for bringing those things up. Those are visionary thoughts that is going to continue to move our division forward, and Dr. Edwards has been doing that, the board is doing that. I think that's really very positive. So I applaud you on that, sir. Now, we still got this calendar. We need to approve this calendar.
No, this is just more for folks to kind of tentatively put things in there, but also just kind of, I wanted to conceptually talk about adding the joint meetings with city council, doing the reorg, like the regular meeting, and then a work session right after that. The other thing that I didn't add on here, but we did, our May work session meeting this year was the celebration of our students that did all those wonderful things. A lot more students than we thought we were going to have. And then we still have students who, like lacrosse and things like that, that are still playing. So one of the suggestions was, could we do it during, we think we can't rush it to try to get it during the 20th of this month. But would we do it in July? And then talking with Whitney, we thought, well, what about the August work session? Because then at least everybody will be back. We know we may miss some of the seniors that might be at college already. But at least folks will definitely be back in town because of school. So making that fall work session, which happens to be on the first day of school, a celebration of all things spring that we missed. With this last iteration of celebrating our kids, and then possibly building one in January that will catch the fall of all of our celebration stuff.
Are you planning to do convocation this year?
Yes.
So could you have like a guest come there, and Dr. Coleman does an excellent job in charging up people.
Well, we haven't even that's a whole nother thing. We gotta talk about how we wanna do
So
that.
the convocation dates will be there.
Yes. How we gonna do that? We've done it so many different ways, but yes.
My second question was, we have VSBA, and I know this year we did not approve the payment for SBMA membership. If things change in next year, you mentioned the word PD, will that, if the board approves it, it'll be count for both, either VSBA, SBMA, or both?
It's up to y'all.
Okay.
I mean, we didn't completely strip you of PD money because you are required to have professional development. We just limited like we did for ourselves, the overnight travel and all the things that make PD a little bit more expensive.
All right. So we have the calendar that Dr. Edwards, I think it gives the board members a lot to think about in terms of the layout for the coming year. And I'm deeply appreciative of you doing that. All right, we'll now move to Section K, the superintendent's comments.
And given the hour, I just want to commend all of our high school students, Laurel, Project Search, and both Fort Hill Empowerment Academy, Rodeo, and the adult school for the marvelous graduations that we had. Luckily, the weather held out. We were indoors for Laurel, but that was still a nice graduation. And I think the kids' speeches were amazing. And if we all can learn a little bit from our students and just how inspiring they are, and what they have taken away from Lynchburg City Schools. It's nice to see how proud they are of their school system, and just the number of honor students, and even in the stands when I forget which school it is that asks the alumni to stand. Just the amount of folks that are there that come back to celebrate our kids. So kudos to them for all of their accomplishments, and I really want to give a shout out to all of the admin teams, teachers, school counselors, everybody, the facilities folks who make that graduation look seamless. We just come in, things are set up, chairs are set up, and it's organized and it's run very well. Everything from the filming to the posting of pictures immediately after, the music, all of it. There are so many people who do the work behind the scenes and get it ready that I just
Excellent.
appreciate all of them. So thank you.
Absolutely excellent. Thank you, Dr. Edwards. We'll start with Ms. Preston with board. Wait a minute, excuse me. Yeah, board comments. Go ahead.
This has been a challenging experience working with the school board. I've learned a lot, and I've had a lot of questions that many of you have helped to answer, and what that's done is given me a greater appreciation for all of the work that the school board does. So congratulations to all of you.
I'm coming here tonight with an attitude of gratitude. And I want to thank our teachers, our staff, the Lynchburg City School System. You guys do a fantastic job, and it just takes a few moments of walking through our school hallways to see how dedicated our teachers and the staff are to the betterment and education of our city school children. And I appreciate it. I know everyone on this board appreciates it. And hopefully that attitude of gratitude will permeate throughout the entire community, including our city council.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Preston and Mr. Trost. Excellent. Dr. Sinha.
What they said, and kudos to Dunbar for SpongeBob the Musical. Was excellent. We really enjoyed it.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Sinha. Dr. Brennan.
Just also want to reiterate the comments of the staff, appreciating so much they've done end of the school year. I know it's been always a challenge, but they do such a great job, and I hope they have a little break over the summer. Particularly as far as staff, I'd like to say appreciation to Director Ethel Reeves, who's moving on to a new position. She has done such a great job for our schools and for our administration over the years, and she's been a great mentor to me as far as working on the Equity Task Force, and I appreciate what she has done, and I'm sure she will do well in the future. And then as far as student appreciation, I also want to congratulate all the students who walked across the stage this weekend, and all the athletes who are competing currently, the lacrosse team at quarterfinals for the state. But I also want to comment on the students. There was at the city council meeting about 2 weeks ago, taking the last comments about the schools, there were about 6 students who came and spoke, unrelated to appointing to the school board, but spoke about the importance of having a diverse school board because our community is diverse, and how it should be politically neutral, and it was so impressive. And if you have a chance to look at it, it was really great. And they were led actually by Kaylin Snyder, our former EC student representative, but it really was an impressive example of what our students can do. And then lastly, a little shout out to Diane Coleman, who Mr. Rude commented on, who wrote the letter to the editor this weekend, which was also great. So it's just so great to see what our students have to say and how well they say it and how supportive they are of our community. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Brennan. Outstanding. Dr. Gupta.
You know, I always think Ms. Preston says less, but always to the point. But your flow is going over to Attorney Trost now. What do you say, attitude?
Attitude of gratitude, baby.
Okay. But I just wanted to continue that. Thank you. You look at 4 people up there, which you normally don't see on camera. Deputy Superintendent Wartica, Ms. Capazio, Ms. Day, and Ms. Pugh.
Wow.
They work tirelessly behind the scene. Normally, they see, Dr. Edwards, you are the pillar, but they are the support pillars of. So thank you for what you do. Last few months have been stressful, but we'll get through this.
Well said, Dr. Gupta. Thank you so much, Dr. Day.
It's been an overwhelming year. I still don't feel like I understand as much of what the schools do and how everything operates as I need to. And I'm into my second year, I'm gonna feel like I need to understand it better, and so I'll just be even more guilty feeling than I am already. But I do appreciate everyone's patience with me, especially Amy and Reed and Karen for responding to the various questions I keep throwing at them. Maybe even throw the same question more than once. I don't know if that's happened yet, but it wouldn't surprise me. But I'm grateful for how responsive they've been to trying to answer my questions and help me understand. But there's a lot of that ahead yet. For me, probably for all of us. I was going to say, do you think after 9 years you understand everything that goes on?
I was getting ready to tell you, the learning curve is very steep. And I must say, at 9 years, I'm still learning every day.
That's what I expected, yeah.
Yes.
So, thank you for everyone's patience.
Thank you, Dr. Day. Mr. Andrews.
Congrats to the recent graduates of both Heritage and Glass. And then I'm just appreciative of you all.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. Let me just say this very briefly. I do want to tonight make sure that I give thanks to previous councils who thought enough of me to appoint me to the school board. I failed to say that. Thank you to Mayor Gillette, Mayor Foster, Mayor Tweedy, Vice Mayor Johnson, and even former Mayor Carl Hutchison. I also want to thank our news media. I think you all have done a fine job of conveying our thoughts throughout the year, and we really want to appreciate you for the work that you do. And also to Tina Day, our board clerk. We appreciate you doing your time, but you are awesome. And I must say to the people to my left and my right, I'm so proud of each of you as board members. And I will fight for you ongoingly going forward. Thank you for the opportunity to be a part. At this time, I wish I could tell you we'd get ready to go home, but since I can't tell you that, I will let you be mindful of the informational items and now move to section N, where the school board needs to convene a closed meeting at this time in pursuant of the Code of Virginia, Section 2.2-3711A1 730. And we will be discussing the following specific matters: PPE, contract, attorney advisement letter, and superintendent's evaluation. What is the pleasure of the board to go into closed meeting?
I move
to go in closed meeting.
Two motions to go
It's
into.
been moved by Dr. Brennan, seconded by Mr. Trost, that we go into closed meeting. Any further questions or discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
School Board Member Ms. Preston.
Well, yes.
Mr. Trost.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta.
Can I amend the motion with the upper limit of 15 minutes in closed session?
I don't think we can do it.
Okay, yes.
School Board Member Dr. Day.
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Andrews.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, we're now in closed meeting. We'll take a couple of minutes to let it, we're going to stay right here and dispatch of these matters very, very nicely.